So ahead of Princess Anne's son, Peter Phillips' second wedding, we'll be telling you everything there is to know about the nuptials, plus whether we might see an appearance from our dear friends in Montecito.
3 o'clock in the morning, June 1st, 2026. In the manicured silence of Montecito, California, the only light is the harsh, synthetic blue glow of a smartphone screen, reflecting off the stunned face of Prince Harry. He is staring at a digital transmission, a final internal synchronization of the guest list for the wedding of Peter Phillips, the son of the Princess Royal. This document is the ultimate ledger of belonging, and as Harry scrolls through the hundreds of names, the silence in the room becomes suffocating. His name, and the name of his wife, Meghan, are nowhere to be found. They have been redlined, excised, erased from the sanctuary of the family's inner circle. This is not a misunderstanding. This is a total administrative ban. Witnesses to the aftermath describe a scene of profound psychological fracture. Harry's initial ngonang, a deep, visceral shock, instantly curdles into a volatile mixture of anger and betrayal. He is seen pacing the length of his study, the adrenaline of rejection, fueling a frantic need for a counter-offensive. He knows that when the sun rises over London, the world will ask why the king's son is missing from the most significant family event of the summer. He cannot let the truth emerge. The truth that he has been formally deemed a security risk to the emotional sanctity of the Vung trio. He picks up the phone. His orders to his public relations team are sharp, desperate, and immediate. We need to control this before they do. Tell them we lost touch. Tell them it was our choice to fade away. And so, the narrative was born. By the time the first morning news cycles began in New York today, the headline was already circulating. Harry and Meghan have lost touch with Peter Phillips. But as we investigate the administrative corridors of the palace, a much colder reality emerges. This statement did not come from a royal aide. It did not come from a spokesperson for Princess Anne. It was a calculated correction manufactured by the California PR machine to mask a devastating institutional rejection. If you want to understand the true psychological chess moves and the power plays happening behind these polished headlines, rather than just consuming the surface drama, click the subscribe button right now. Your support allows us to peel back the layers of this cold court chronicle. While the chaos of a stung rebellion unfolded in California, the scene in London was one of chilling, institutional calm. At his desk, Peter Phillips, the man once considered the bridge between the warring brothers, sat in silence. He was not acting out of malice or a desire for headlines. He was acting as a verbin, a guardian of the institution's survival. Those close to the Princess Royal's household recount that Peter spent less than 10 seconds looking at the final list before signing his name at the bottom. A source within the administrative office describes the moment Peter made the decision. He reportedly looked at his chief of staff and whispered a sentence that carries the weight of a final judgment. "We cannot allow a commercial camera to become a guest at a family sanctuary. The precedent is set. The distance is now structural." With those few words, Peter Phillips did what the King and the Prince of Wales had hesitated to do so publicly. He enforced a protocol of total isolation. He didn't need a shouting match or a televised interview. He simply used the power of the guest list, the most ancient weapon of the aristocratic world, to signal that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are no longer part of the royal nervous system. What the public is witnessing this morning is the birth of a new, cold reality. The lost touch narrative is a thin veil over a deep institutional wound. For Harry, the realization is setting in that his family has mastered the one thing he feared most, the ability to move forward without him, in a silence so loud it can be heard across the Atlantic. Before we move into the structural details of how the palace is now recoding its security protocols to ensure this isolation remains permanent, I want to hear from you in the comments. Do you believe the lost touch narrative was a clever move by Montecito? Or has it backfired by confirming their total exclusion? Drop a comment below and hit that like button if you value this level of deep dive analysis. The sun is rising on a new era of the British monarchy, and the shadows are longer than ever before. To understand the magnitude of this exclusion, one must first understand the geography of power within the British Isles. The Cotswolds is not merely a collection of picturesque villages and rolling green hills, it is the epicenter of aristocratic discretion. In the high-stakes world of the monarchy, this region functions as a sanctuary of the unseen, a place where the royal family sheds their public masks and operates under the fortress of silence. Here, the laws of the tabloid world do not apply. Here, loyalty is measured by what is never said, and trust is the only currency that permits entry. When Peter Phillips selected this sacred ground for his union with Harriet Spurling, he was not just choosing a scenic backdrop. He was activating a protocol of inviolability. In the weeks leading up to this June morning, the air in the Cotswolds has been thick with a specific kind of tension. Security teams have not only been sweeping for physical threats, but for digital vulnerabilities. The mandate from the Princess Royal's household was absolute. This event must remain a vacuum, untouched by the external noise of the modern media machine. This is precisely where the logic of Prince Harry's ban becomes undeniable. To the outside world, it may look like a petty family feud, but through the lens of the institution, it is a matter of systemic integrity. The consensus within the administrative offices of the palace is that the Duke of Sussex has undergone a frequency shift. He is no longer seen as a son, a brother, or a cousin. He is viewed as a walking, talking recording device for the global entertainment industry, a senior administrative aide, speaking under the strictest conditions of anonymity, reportedly summarized the collective anxiety of the family during a briefing at St. James's Palace. The aide is quoted as saying, "The Duke has transformed his private history into a commercial product. To invite him into the sanctuary of the Cotswolds is to invite Netflix, the publishing houses of New York, and the analytical gaze of 1,000 commentators into the heart of a private family moment." The tragedy of the situation lies in the fact that Harry has lost his security clearance on an emotional level. In the royal world, privacy is the ultimate source of power. By commercializing his proximity to the crown through memoirs, docuseries, and high-profile interviews, Harry has effectively broadcasted his own incompatibility code. He represents the lens, while the Cotswolds represents the sanctuary. These two forces cannot occupy the same space without the sanctuary being destroyed. Peter Phillips, a man known for his grounded and steady nature, understood this calculation better than anyone. His decision to omit Harry was not an act of aggression, but an act of institutional preservation. He recognized that the version of Harry that exists in 2026 is a variable the system can no longer calculate safely. Those close to Peter suggest he felt a profound duty to the Prince and Princess of Wales, ensuring that Catherine's return to the family circle would not be overshadowed by the psychological shadow of the California exodus. The question that now hangs in the cool morning air of the English countryside is no longer about a missing invitation. It is about the permanent administrative divorce that has taken place. If the most private sanctuary of the family is now a no-fly zone for the king's second son, what remains of his connection to the soil of his birth? The fortress of silence has been reinforced, and the gates have been locked from the inside, leaving the world to wonder, what happens when the one who was once the heart of the family becomes the very person the family must protect itself against? The answer lies in the shifting shadows of the succession hierarchy, where the next move is already being whispered in the corridors of power. To understand the chilling finality of this morning's headlines, we must look back at a bond that was once considered the last unbreakable thread of the House of Windsor. Peter Phillips was never just a cousin to Prince Harry. He was the elder statesman of the younger generation, a protective shield who guided Harry through the wreckage of their youth. When the world watched two young princes walk behind their mother's coffin in 1997, Peter was the silent strength waiting in the wings. Years later, at the funeral of Prince Philip, it was Peter who volunteered for the most agonizing role in the procession. He walked between William and Harry, not because protocol demanded a buffer, but because he was the only person on Earth both brothers still trusted to hold the emotional weight of their fractured brotherhood. He was the bridge, but in the cold light of June 1st, 2026, that bridge has not just been burned, it has been dismantled, stone by stone. For Harry, this exclusion feels like the ultimate betrayal. Sources close to the California household describe a sense of profound disorientation. To Harry, Peter was the safe royal, the one who didn't care about titles, the one who understood the pressure of being born into a gilded cage. To be uninvited by Peter is to be told that there is no longer a seat at the table, even in the shadows. But behind the iron gates of London, a different strategy is at play. The Prince of Wales, William, has spent the last 2 years constructing a cordon sanitaire around his family, particularly to protect Catherine as she continues her measured return to the public eye. William's stance is a masterclass in institutional boundary setting. He is no longer interested in reconciliation, he is interested in stability. And in this mission, Peter Phillips has made his choice. Peter is no longer the buffer between two brothers, he has become the vanguard of the new regime. The timeline of this morning's collapse reveals the sheer velocity of this institutional divorce. At 2 o'clock this morning, London time, Peter Phillips sat with his security detail to finalize the infiltrator protocols for the Cotswolds estate. This was the moment the guest list was locked. The names of the Duke and Duchess of Sussex were officially flagged as non-attendees for the purposes of perimeter security. By 3 o'clock, the digital echoes reached Montecito. When Harry realized his credentials for the family's internal communication network had been restricted, the shock was absolute. The fury that followed was not just about a wedding. It was the realization that his access all areas pass to the British monarchy had expired. At 4 o'clock, the Sussex PR machine scrambled to launch a preemptive strike. The draft of the Lost Touch narrative was leaked to friendly outlets, a desperate attempt to frame the isolation as a mutual drifting rather than a formal expulsion. It was an effort to save face, to tell the world they weren't rejected, but had simply moved on. By 10 o'clock this morning, as the sun climbed over the palace, the response from the royal press office was a deadly silence. No comment, no confirmation, no denial. In the language of the court, this silence is a weapon. It denies Harry the oxygen of a public feud and leaves him shouting into a vacuum. The broken brotherhood is no longer a private tragedy. It is a structural reality of the British state. Peter Phillips, the man who once walked between them to keep the peace, has now stepped aside, leaving a vast, empty space where a family used to be. As the world watches the clock tick toward the summer wedding, one question lingers. When the bridge is gone, how does one ever find their way back to the other side? The answer may lie in the cold administrative files of the palace, where the future is being written without a single mention of the spare. In the ancient architecture of the British monarchy, the most lethal weapon is not the sword, it is the administrative seal. While the public consumes the drama of Lost Touch as a simple story of drifting cousins, the bureaucracy of the crown is busy transforming that narrative into a permanent, legal reality. The genius of the palace, the cold, institutional brilliance of the machine, lies in its ability to take an opponent's lie and weaponize it into a procedural guillotine. To understand this, one must look at the staircase of authority that was activated the moment the Montecito PR machine released its statement today, June 1st, 2026. It began in the home office of the Princess Royal. Princess Anne has long been the administrative sentinel of the family, the one who oversees the internal discipline of the household. When the Lost Touch headline hit the wires, her office did not issue a denial. Instead, they quietly received the information and transcribed it into a formal dossier. In the eyes of the palace, a public statement from a royal's official representatives is not just spin, it is a declaration of intent. This dossier was immediately escalated to the Royal Management Office, the silent heart of the hierarchy schema. This is where the security protocols and residential privileges of every family member are managed. The bureaucrats here do not deal in emotion, they deal in status. They looked at the claim that the Duke of Sussex had lost touch and saw an opportunity for institutional pivot. The legal mechanism that followed was swift and irreversible. By claiming to have lost touch, Harry's team provided the palace with the perfect justification to invoke a clause known as voluntary termination of contact. This is a masterstroke of administrative warfare. The logic is a cold, three-step cycle that seals Harry's fate. First, Harry's camp manufactured a false narrative of drifting apart to save face and hide the shame of being uninvited. They thought they were controlling the story. Second, the palace accepted this lie as an absolute, legal truth. They did not fight the narrative, they validated it. Third, by validating the loss of touch, the palace triggered an automatic administrative closure. Under this protocol, if a member of the lineal bloodline is officially categorized as having lost touch, they are no longer entitled to the hierarchy privileges that come with active belonging. This includes access to the internal royal security briefings, the use of diplomatic channels for international travel, and the access pass to private royal residences. The palace effectively said, "If you have lost touch with us, then we no longer have a duty to keep you in the loop." The result is a breathless silence in the corridors of power. By trying to win a 24-hour news cycle, Harry has walked into a permanent administrative trap. He thought he was using a shield to protect his ego, but the Royal Management Office turned that shield into a wall. The administrative seal has been applied to his file. In the database of the British state, the Duke of Sussex is no longer an active participant. He is a closed record. As the world discusses the sadness of cousins growing apart, the reality is much more clinical. A door has been locked from the inside, not with a key, but with a stamp. The palace has used Harry's own words to build his prison. The question for the months ahead is no longer about whether he will attend the next wedding, but whether he will even be able to clear the security perimeter of the country he once called home. The machine has moved on, and it has used the spare's own hand to sign the divorce papers of the state. The most profound change in the royal ecosystem this morning is not a change in policy, but a transformation of the human soul. For decades, Peter Phillips occupied a very specific psychological space. He was the neutral ground. He was the cousin who could speak to everyone, the one who didn't carry the weight of the crown on his shoulders, and the one who served as the emotional connective tissue between the warring factions of the House of Windsor. But as the sun rises over the Cotswolds on this first day of June, 2026, that version of Peter Phillips is gone. The bridge has officially transformed into a human firewall. This is the peak of the psychological warfare currently unfolding within the palace walls. Peter Phillips has not issued a single angry statement. He has not participated in a tell-all documentary or written a vengeful memoir. Instead, he has performed a maneuver far more lethal to the Sussex brand. He has chosen a side with absolute, visible finality. As the preparations for his summer wedding reach their final stages, the visual cues coming from the British countryside are devastating. Reports from those within the inner circle describe Peter standing shoulder to shoulder with the Prince and Princess of Wales in the golden sunlight of the English spring. There is a sense of laughter, a sense of shared history, and most importantly, a sense of peace. In this tableau, the absence of Prince Harry is not a void to be filled. It is a silence that feels like a relief. This is the technique of invisibilization, the most brutal punishment the British monarchy can inflict. By simply moving forward with life, by being happy, by being present, and by doing so without acknowledging the chaos across the Atlantic, Peter Phillips is sending a message that resonates louder than any legal document. One close associate of the family reportedly described Peter's mindset as a steel-clad resolution. The associate noted, Peter spent years trying to be the peacemaker. He waited, he watched, and he extended his loyalty until there was nothing left to extend. He has realized that you cannot build a bridge to someone who is busy setting fire to the other side. Now, he isn't fighting Harry. He is simply acting as if Harry's frequency no longer exists. For Harry, this is a psychological catastrophe. He has spent years framing himself as the victim of a cold institution and a hostile press. But it is impossible to apply those labels to Peter Phillips. Peter is the cousin who knew him before the fame, the one who held him when their world fell apart in 1997. To be rendered invisible by Peter is to be told that you are no longer a part of the family's reality. The message Peter is broadcasting is one of sanctuary maintenance. By standing with William and Catherine, he is creating a physical and emotional barricade around the future of the monarchy. He is telling Harry, you chose the glass cage of California. You chose the lens, the lights, and the commercialization of our private lives. Because of that choice, you can no longer step into the sanctuary of my world. As we watch these figures interact this morning, there is a chilling realization that the internal map of the royal family has been redrawn. The firewall is up, and it is made of the people Harry once trusted most. The question that lingers in the minds of every royal observer today is not whether Harry can break through this wall, but whether he even understands that the person holding the door shut is the same person who once tried so hard to keep it open. The silence from the Cotswolds is deafening, and it suggests that for the first time in centuries, the Windsor family has found a way to win a war without firing a single shot. 14:15 hours. Pacific Standard Time. Montecito, California. A heavy leather-bound public relations dossier hits a mahogany desk with a sound like a gavel. The room is silent, but the atmosphere is electric, with a sudden, sharp realization.
Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex. An exclusive in The Sun on Sunday, Rafe. Meg's summer return. The Duchess of Sussex is planning to return to the United Kingdom for the first time in 4 years.
Meghan Markle, the Duchess of Sussex, has just received a digital notification that changes everything. It is March 15, 2026, and the long-planned Operation Birmingham has just hit a brick wall built by King Charles III himself. This is not just a family disagreement. This is the total collapse of what internal insiders are calling the 2024 recovery campaign. For months, the narrative was being carefully stitched together.
Meghan is due to join hubby Prince Harry at an Invictus Games event in Birmingham if their security is approved. Now, my understanding, Rafe, is that Invictus will happen in 2027, but this story relates to Meghan Markle arriving on our shores this year. Talk about unwanted illegal immigration.
A triumphant return to the United Kingdom, the Invictus Games serving as the backdrop, and the long-awaited introduction of Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet to the British public. It was supposed to be the nuclear option, a move designed to force the hand of the monarchy by using the innocence of the Sussex children to leverage an apology, an anointment, and most importantly, an ironclad security detail. But as the morning sun hits the California coast, that leverage has evaporated.
Yes, precisely. The Invictus Games are in July 2027, but there's always 1 year before the games. There's always a royal visit to the.
A high-priority email from the Cabinet Office carrying the cold, bureaucratic subject line: Security Protocol Update. Reference Sussex, 2024, has officially landed. It is a document that signals a total blockade. Before we dissect the hidden clauses in this document that have left Meghan fuming, do us a quick favour. If you want to stay ahead of the curve with every royal power play and palace showdown, hit that subscribe button right now. Less than 10% of our viewers are subscribed, and you do not want to miss the next update on this developing crisis. Give this video a like and drop a comment below with the word block if you think King Charles is doing the right thing for the monarchy. Your engagement keeps this investigative series alive. The scene inside the Sussex mansion was one of pure tactical desperation. Sources close to the couple report that following a brief, tense telephone exchange with a representative from the royal household in London, Meghan's reaction was immediate. Witnesses described the Duchess as utterly lost for words before the folder was thrown. She reportedly turned to Prince Harry and issued a chilling summary of the situation. The voiceover narration of her internal reaction would sound like this: They are trapping us. They want the children's presence for the cameras, but they refuse to grant us the protection that guarantees our safety. If we cannot return on our terms, we are being erased from the history of this country. What Meghan is reacting to is the cold mechanism of RAVEC, the Executive Committee for the Protection of Royalty and Public Figures. New data obtained by investigative reporters suggests that the king has not just stayed silent, he has actively endorsed a policy of strategic separation. The mechanism is simple but devastating. Step 1. The king designates the visit as private rather than official. Step 2. This designation triggers an automatic denial of state-funded security. Step 3. Without state security, Meghan's legal team advises against the children travelling. The result? The Sussexes are forced to either stay in California or return as private citizens, stripped of the royal pomp they need to sustain their global brand. The timeline leading to this breaking point is undeniable. In June 2022, during the Platinum Jubilee, the world saw the first signs of the freeze. Meghan was met with a wall of boos at St. Paul's Cathedral, a sound that still haunts her branding strategy. By January 2023, after the release of the memoir Spare, the king took the unprecedented step of evicting them from Frogmore Cottage. Now, in March 2026, the final door has been slammed shut. The Sun on Sunday is reporting that King Charles has made it clear that he will not be a prop in a Sussex rehabilitation tour. The palace's internal memos suggest the king views the children not as bargaining chips, but as family members who should be protected from the media circus. Meghan is accused of orchestrating. The authority here is absolute. The king, as the head of state, has the final word on who represents the crown. By blocking Meghan's carefully staged return, he is effectively deplatforming her on British soil. As we stand here on March 15, the fallout is only beginning. Meghan Markle isn't just angry. She is facing the reality that her nuclear option has been neutralized. The question now is, what happens when the Duchess has nothing left to lose? We are looking at a scenario tree where every branch leads to a deeper conflict. Stay with us as we move into the specifics of the security files and the secret meetings that led to this historic rejection. The Game of Thrones in the 21st century has just entered its most dangerous phase. To understand the sheer magnitude of Meghan's current fury, we must look at the digital breadcrumbs of a systemic rejection. This is not a sudden whim of the king, it is the final chapter in a decade-long chronicle of calculated failure. When we analyze the timeline, a chilling pattern emerges, a slow-motion train wreck of a brand that once held the world in its palm, only to find itself currently locked out of the very gates it tried to storm. The foundation of this drama traces back to September 2014 in London. This was the genesis. The Invictus Games were born, and Prince Harry was the undisputed golden boy of the monarchy. He had the total, unconditional support of the royal family. At that moment, the Sussex brand was built on service, sacrifice, and the prestige of the crown. It was a position of absolute power, one that Meghan Markle would later attempt to weaponize. Fast forward to June 2022. The setting: St. Paul's Cathedral. The event: the late Queen's Platinum Jubilee. This was the moment the mask slipped. As Meghan and Harry ascended the steps, the silence was shattered not by cheers, but by a tidal wave of public boos. It was the first time the Duchess faced the raw reality of her standing in the United Kingdom. The immediate consequence was devastating. The Meghan Markle brand hit rock bottom. It was no longer about royalty. It was about a public that felt betrayed. The escalation reached a fever pitch in January 2023 with the global launch of the tell-all memoir, Spare. The action was a direct assault on the sanctity of the palace. The reaction from King Charles was swift and surgical. He did not issue a statement, he issued an eviction. Direct financial support was severed, and the couple was officially stripped of their United Kingdom residence, Frogmore Cottage. They were, for all intents and purposes, exiled from the physical geography of the monarchy. But the most personal blow occurred in February 2024. After news of the King's health challenges broke, Harry embarked on an 11-hour flight to London, desperate for a reconciliation that could serve as a PR reset. The result was a humiliation felt across the Atlantic. King Charles granted his son exactly 45 minutes of his time. He pointedly refused to see Meghan, and he refused to discuss the grandchildren. The message was clear. You are family, but you are no longer part of the firm. By July 2024, in Birmingham, the desperation had morphed into a new strategy. During the preliminary events for the 2027 Invictus Games, Meghan began circulating plans to bring Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet back to British soil. Internal documents suggest this was designed as the ultimate media weapon. If the public saw the children, they might forgive the parents. If the king saw his grandchildren, he might restore their security. But we have reached the present day, and the gates of Buckingham Palace have never been more tightly sealed. King Charles has officially issued the block. Every official event, every royal balcony, and every state-funded security detail has been removed from the Sussex equation. Meghan's carefully orchestrated PR campaign has been declared dead on arrival. As we look at this wreckage of a return, one question remains hidden in the shadows of the palace. If Meghan cannot use the children as a bridge back to royalty, what is the next move in her California bunker? There is a whispered rumor of a private correspondence, a letter sent from Montecito to London that contains a final, desperate ultimatum. The contents of that letter are about to redefine the meaning of royal war. To understand why Meghan Markle is currently trapped in a California stalemate, you have to look past the tabloid headlines and into the cold, bureaucratic machinery of the British state. It is called RAVEC, the Executive Committee for the Protection of Royalty and Public Figures. While the world sees a family feud, the palace is operating a sophisticated legal trap that has effectively neutralized Meghan's most powerful move. This is the security trap, and here is exactly how the mechanism works to keep the Sussexes in a state of permanent isolation. The process begins with Step 1, the activation phase. According to official protocols, because Harry and Meghan are no longer working royals, they cannot simply land at Heathrow and expect a blue light escort. They are required to submit a formal notice of stay at least 4 to 8 weeks before their intended arrival. Every date, every location, and every planned movement must be documented and handed over to the very institution they spent years criticizing. This puts Meghan in a vulnerable position before she even boards a private jet. She must reveal her entire hand to the palace hierarchy. Then comes Step 2, the audit phase. Once that notice is received, RAVEC, a powerful coalition involving the Home Office, the Metropolitan Police, and the royal household, conducts a rigorous threat assessment. They aren't looking at whether Meghan is famous. They are looking at whether her presence creates a genuine national security risk that justifies the use of taxpayer-funded specialized protection. In this phase, the Sussexes have zero control. They are no longer the ones defining their importance. A committee of grey-suited officials is. But the true kill switch lies in Step 3, the status block. This is where King Charles holds the ultimate authority. Under the current legal framework, the provision of high-level security is tied directly to working royal status. As the head of state, the king has the sole prerogative to define who is a working member of the monarchy. By maintaining the firm line that Harry and Meghan are private citizens, Charles ensures that the RAVEC mechanism defaults to a no or a significantly downgraded security tier. It is a legal checkmate that requires no public shouting, only a quiet refusal to change a status. The result is Step 4, the total isolation consequence. This is the nuclear winter for the Sussex brand. Without what is known as IPP, Internationally Protected Person status, Meghan's legal and insurance teams in California have issued a stark warning. It is too high a risk to bring Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet to the United Kingdom. Think about the psychological brilliance of this mechanism. By denying the security, the palace isn't banning the children. They are creating a situation where Meghan herself feels forced to keep them away. If the children do not come, there is no heartwarming reconciliation photo. There is no footage of the king hugging his grandchildren for the next Netflix docuseries. There is no Sussex rehabilitation tour. Meghan Markle is reportedly losing it behind closed doors because she has realized that her bargaining chips are currently stuck in a California vault, guarded by a security wall she cannot afford to maintain and a royal wall she cannot break. The brand is being starved of its royal oxygen, but even as this trap snaps shut, a new and even more high-stakes conflict is brewing. Reports are surfacing of a secret dossier being prepared by the Palace A authority ladder that details every single breach of protocol the Sussexes have committed since leaving, and the deadline for its release is closer than anyone realizes. The collapse of Meghan Markle's planned return to the United Kingdom is not merely a result of bad timing or hurt feelings. It is the result of a meticulously constructed authority ladder, a three-tiered bureaucratic fortress that King Charles has quietly reinforced to ensure that the Sussex brand remains outside the royal perimeter. While Meghan has been strategizing in California, the palace has been moving the heavy machinery of the British state into position. To understand why Meghan is losing this battle so comprehensively, we have to look at the cold, hard evidence of this institutional lockout. The first tier of this ladder is found in the very foundation of Meghan's planned stage, the Invictus Games. Leaked internal records from the Invictus Games Foundation in London have confirmed a devastating detail. During high-level, closed-door planning sessions for the upcoming Birmingham events, the official invitations were issued with surgical precision. The documents confirm that invitations were sent to Prince Harry alone, as the founding patron. Crucially, the standard +1 protocols for spouse and family were pointedly omitted from the executive briefing notes. For a duchess who views herself as a co-star in the Invictus narrative, this is a professional decapitation. The message from the foundation under the subtle guidance of the palace is clear. The event is about the veterans, not a Sussex rehabilitation tour. Rising to the second tier of authority, we encounter the uncompromising wall of the United Kingdom Home Office. Despite months of legal manoeuvring and public pleas regarding family safety, the Home Office has maintained an ironclad stance. The latest ruling, reinforced just 72 hours ago, confirms that the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are not entitled to automatic, taxpayer-funded police protection. The government's position is that status is not a commodity that can be bought or reclaimed through media pressure. By refusing to blink, the Home Office has effectively stripped Meghan of the royal aura that a police escort provides. Without those flashing lights and high-level security, Meghan is forced to face a public that, according to the latest polling, is less than welcoming. But the most lethal tier of this ladder is the legal mechanism of strategic silence employed by King Charles himself. In the world of royal protocol, silence is not an absence of action. It is a definitive exercise of power. A critical legal deadline for reviewing Harry's security status for the upcoming Birmingham countdown events has officially passed. This window was the final opportunity for the King to intervene and grant special category protection for his daughter-in-law and grandchildren. By choosing not to act by letting that deadline expire in total silence, the King has signalled a no-consent policy to the Metropolitan Police. Without the King's explicit authorization, no specialized police unit is permitted to escort the Duchess on British soil. This isn't just a lack of support, it is a legal blockade. Charles has essentially ensured that if Meghan chooses to step foot in Birmingham, she does so as a private citizen with no more protection than any other international tourist. Meghan Markle is reportedly reeling because she has hit a wall that PR stunts cannot break. The authority ladder has been climbed and every step has been blocked. But as the Duchess remains isolated in Montecito, a new and darker question is emerging among palace insiders. If the King is willing to go this far to block her return, What is he prepared to do if Harry attempts to bypass the system and bring the children over in secret? The scenario tree of this royal conflict is about to grow a very dangerous new branch, one that could change the line of succession forever. The psychological breaking point of this royal standoff isn't happening in a press release. It is happening behind the heavy velvet curtains of the centre room at Buckingham Palace. This is the room that leads directly to the iconic balcony, the very stage where the monarchy presents its united front to the world. But on this morning of March 15, 2026, the atmosphere inside is anything but united. Sources within the Lord Chamberlain's office have described a moment of quiet, clinical finality. King Charles, seated at a desk overlooking the Mall, was presented with the final VIP guest list for the Invictus Games 2027 in Birmingham. With a single stroke of a fountain pen, the King reportedly struck through one specific name: Meghan, Duchess of Sussex. The rationale behind this move is a chilling piece of strategic erasure. The King's advisors have been clear. Every time Meghan Markle enters a room, the event ceases to be about the cause and becomes the Meghan show. By removing her from the official VIP protocol, the King is neutralizing her ability to dominate the narrative. He is ensuring that the veterans of Invictus remain the focus, effectively stripping Meghan of the global stage she desperately needs to maintain her relevance. But the true tragedy of this psychological warfare lies in the collateral damage. Prince Archie, now 6 years old, and Princess Lilibet, aged 4. In the cold light of Montecito, these children are no longer just family. They have been transformed into bargaining chips in a high-stakes PR game. Meghan's strategy was to use the children's milestone ages to trigger a wave of public sympathy. A grandchildren's homecoming that would make it impossible for the King to deny her the royal treatment. However, the palace has counterattacked with devastating data. A confidential sentiment analysis report recently circulated within the palace suggests that Meghan's popularity in the United Kingdom has entered a critical death spiral. The numbers are staggering. For the first time in modern polling history, Meghan Markle's approval ratings have dipped below those of Prince Andrew. This is the data point that changed everything. The King's security team has warned that Meghan's appearance at the Birmingham NEC, the National Exhibition Centre, would not just result in a few isolated boos. It would likely trigger a massive, uncontrollable wave of public protest. The optics of a duchess being hounded by the public while attempting to attend a charity event would be a catastrophic security failure. By blocking her return, Charles isn't just punishing Meghan, he is protecting the monarchy from the visual evidence of how much she is disliked. Meghan is reportedly losing it because she has hit the ultimate ceiling. She cannot out-PR a king who refuses to speak, and she cannot outmaneuver a public that refuses to forget. She is watching her children grow up in a vacuum, separated from their heritage by a wall of her own making, while the King remains immovable in his centre room. The walls are closing in. But as the sun sets over the California mansion, there is a new, alarming development. Intelligence analysts have picked up a surge in Sussex-aligned media activity, a precursor to what some are calling the scorched earth response. If Meghan Markle cannot have her royal stage, she may be preparing to burn the script entirely. The next 48 hours will determine if this family feud turns into a constitutional crisis. Is Harry prepared to choose between his father's silence and his wife's final ultimatum? The answer lies in a hidden scenario that the palace is terrified to acknowledge. As we stand at this historic crossroads on the morning of March 15, 2026, the data suggests we are no longer looking at a family reconciliation, but a calculated endgame. The diplomatic lines between Montecito and Buckingham Palace have gone silent, leaving us with a scenario tree that points toward a permanent fracturing of the House of Windsor. Intelligence from royal insiders and strategic analysts suggests 3 potential paths, but only one carries the weight of reality. The first path is the worst-case projection. In this scenario, Meghan Markle chooses to ignore the warnings, ignores the lack of state security, and attempts to force a public appearance at the Birmingham NEC. It would be a high-stakes gamble for a brand that is already on life support. The projected consequence: branding suicide. A second, more aggressive street, Paul's Cathedral moment, where the boos are captured in high definition and broadcast globally, would render the Sussex brand toxic to any future commercial partners. It would be the final, public confirmation that the Duchess is no longer a royal, but an antagonist. The second path is the fantasy scenario, the 5% probability that King Charles relents. This would involve a sudden grant of high-level security and a private family summit at Balmoral. While this is what Harry reportedly prays for, the institutional mechanisms of the monarchy make it nearly impossible. The king cannot be seen to reward the scorched earth tactics of the last 3 years without alienating the British public and the Prince and Princess of Wales. For Charles, the crown must always come before the sun. This leaves us with the strategic reality, the most likely scenario currently unfolding. Harry will return to the United Kingdom alone. He will stand on that stage in Birmingham, a founding patron without his family, protected by a private security detail that lacks the authority of the state. Meanwhile, from the safety of her California bunker, Meghan will activate a victimhood narrative like never before. We will see a flood of leaked reports accusing the palace of cruelty and calculated separation, claiming the king is intentionally keeping a mother and her children away from their heritage. Harry becomes the lonely exile, a man trapped between a wife who refuses to yield and a father who refuses to bend. He remains a prince in title, but a ghost in his own country. But as the Duchess prepares her next media offensive, she may have overlooked the most dangerous document in the royal archive. There is a whispered secret within the legal corridors of the palace, a secret clause regarding the royal prerogative. Historical legal experts point to a precedent that dates back centuries, one that was reportedly reaffirmed in the private papers of the late Queen Elizabeth II. It concerns the ultimate guardianship of the grandchildren of the monarch. The question that is currently sending shockwaves through Meghan's legal team is this: if Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet touch British soil, does the king, under ancient royal prerogative, gain legal control over their movements? If they enter the United Kingdom, does Meghan Markle lose the power to take them back to America? The security trap may have just been a distraction for the guardianship trap. The game has moved from PR to a battle for the next generation of the line of succession. Before we reveal the specific clauses of this guardianship dossier in our next investigative report, we need to hear from you. Is King Charles playing a masterstroke of genius, or is he pushing Harry too far? Drop a comment below with the word "Trapid" if you think the Sussexes are in a corner they can't escape. If you found this deep dive valuable, hit that like button and subscribe to stay locked into this developing crisis. We are tracking every move, every document, and every heartbeat of this royal war. The dossier on the Queen's secret will is coming next. You do not want to be late for that update. Thank you for watching. March 13th, 2026, 08:15 a.m. While the world was waking up to what they thought was a routine Royal Friday, a convoy of 3 black sedans, devoid of royal crests or diplomatic flags, accelerated through the side gates of Buckingham Palace. They bypassed the ceremonial guards and headed straight for the Privy Purse entrance. This was not a visit from a foreign dignitary or a friendly family member. This was the arrival of the elite legal strike team from Farrar and Company, carrying a dossier that has just ignited a constitutional earthquake within the House of Windsor. This is breaking news that has left the palace inner circle in a state of absolute paralysis. The document they carried is now being whispered about in the hallways as the Windsor Black File, and its contents are designed to do the one thing no one thought possible: dismantle the king's absolute authority over the family's private fortune. Inside the king's private study, the atmosphere was described by insiders as suffocatingly cold. King Charles III sat across from a lead attorney who did not bow, but instead presented a mountain of legal ink and ironclad signatures. For the last 18 months, the king has reigned under a singular, unchallenged assumption that the private wealth of the late Queen Elizabeth II was his by divine and hereditary right. He has allocated funds, signed off on massive renovations for private estates, and redirected tens of millions of pounds into his own vision for the monarchy as if the money were his personal inheritance. But as of this morning, that assumption has been shattered. The dossier proves that for over a year and a half, the king has been spending wealth that legally belongs to his youngest brother, Prince Edward. According to a witness account relayed through palace staff, the king's initial reaction was one of stunned disbelief. The voiceover narration of the encounter paints a chilling picture. The king reportedly looked at the dossier and demanded to know, "On whose authority is this challenge being made?" To which the lead attorney replied with a calm, devastating precision, "On the authority of your mother's final, sealed instructions. Instructions that you have unknowingly violated since the day of your coronation." The room fell into a terrifying silence. This is not just a family disagreement, this is a legal ambush with stakes reaching into the hundreds of millions of pounds. If you are watching this as the news breaks on this Friday morning, you are witnessing the moment the Crown's power met the reality of the law. Make sure to hit the subscribe button right now and turn on all notifications because we are tracking the King's response minute by minute. Drop a comment below with the word truth if you think the late Queen's final must be followed regardless of the King's title. Your engagement helps us bring these hidden royal files to light. The Windsor Black File contains evidence of over £35 million in unauthorised draws from private accounts that were specifically deeded to Edward. For 18 months, Charles ignored the fine print, believing that as sovereign, he was above the mundane details of probate. He mistook Edward's quiet nature for submission and mistook his own title for ownership. But the dossier reveals a cease and desist order that effectively freezes the king's access to the family's most lucrative private holdings. The legal executors have reportedly warned that if the king does not immediately sign the letters of restitution to return the funds to Edward's control, the matter will move from the palace study to a formal audit that could humiliate the monarchy on a global scale. The king reportedly stood up, paced the room, and stated, "I have acted only in the interest of preserving the institution." But the legal team had an answer ready, narrating that the institution is built on the law, and the law says this property is not yours to preserve. Charles believed that the Vuong Mien the Crown granted him total dominion. He has spent his morning discovering that he has been a manager of a fortune he does not own. This is a moment of profound humiliation for a man who has never wanted for anything. He has been whistled by his own legal team, acting on behalf of the brother he once dismissed as the weak link. As we look at the clock, it is now nearly midday in London, and the king remains sequestered with his advisors. The fallout from this 08:15 a.m. ambush is only just beginning. The Windsor Black File has hinted at even deeper secrets, including the involvement of Queen Camilla in the king's financial consolidation and a secret alliance between Prince William and the Sussexes that may have paved the way for this strike. The quiet rebel has finally spoken, and his voice is backed by the one thing a king cannot ignore, his mother's final word, "Stay with us." Like this video to show your support for investigative royal reporting, and stay tuned as we prepare to reveal the specific properties and secret offshore accounts that are at the centre of this battle for the Windsor legacy. The ambush is over, but the war for the family's soul has just begun. The silence currently hanging over the royal corridors is not merely the result of a legal shock, it is the sound of a carefully constructed shadow empire beginning to crumble. To understand why King Charles believed he could ignore his mother's final instructions for over 18 months, one must look at the person standing closest to his ear. Behind the king's public push for what he called a slimmed-down monarchy lies the strategic mind of Queen Camilla. While the public was told that reducing the number of working royals was about efficiency and modernization, the reality inside the palace was far more surgical. This was not a reform. It was a financial purge designed to consolidate every ounce of Windsor wealth under one singular authority. Since September 2022, Camilla has reportedly been the primary architect of a plan known internally as the Asset Concentration Mandate. The goal was simple but devastating: to redirect every private estate, every offshore trust, and every family investment, specifically those in the Norfolk region and international holdings, directly into the Privy Purse. This is the King's Private Fund, an account that answers to no one but the sovereign. By doing this, Camilla sought to ensure that no member of the royal family could stand independently. She wanted to transform the king's siblings from autonomous royals into what staff have described as grace and favour dependents, individuals who would have to ask for the king's permission for every pound they spent. However, this was not just about economics, it was deeply personal. The rivalry between Queen Camilla and Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh, has been one of the palace's most guarded secrets. For decades, Sophie was the late Queen's second daughter, the trusted confidant who shared quiet afternoons at Windsor and held the keys to the Queen's private heart. Camilla, who spent a lifetime fighting for acceptance within the firm, reportedly viewed this intimacy with deep-seated resentment. To Camilla, Sophie represented a remnant of the old guard, a rival for influence, who didn't need a crown to be loved by the matriarch. Insiders suggest that Camilla's whispers to the king were constant and calculated. In a private exchange recounted by a former household official, Camilla was heard telling Charles, "A king who allows his wealth to be fragmented is a king who invites dissent. We must bring everything back to the centre." When Charles questioned the impact on his brother Edward, Camilla reportedly replied with chilling pragmatism, "Edward is a team player. Charles, he will understand that the institution comes before individual inheritance." It was this advice that emboldened the king to sign off on the management of properties he never legally owned. Camilla's strategy was to starve the younger siblings of their financial independence, effectively making them yes-men to her and the king's new regime. She believed that if she could control the money, she could control the legacy. She viewed the Sussexes' quiet nature as a sign of weakness and their loyalty as a sign of submission. She assumed that by the time the lawyers noticed the asset concentration mandate had overstepped its bounds, the money would already be moved, the trusts dissolved, and the power finalized. But she made one fatal error in her calculations. She underestimated the man who has spent 60 years being overlooked. She saw Prince Edward as the artistic, quiet son who avoided conflict at all costs. She never considered that the man who says the least often observes the most. While Camilla was busy rearranging the furniture of the royal treasury and building a financial wall around Charles, the quiet rebel was in the background, documenting every move. The Velvet Hand thought it was strangling the competition, but it was actually tightening a noose around its own legal authority. The question remains, how will Camilla react now that her financial purge has been exposed as a legal transgression? The shadow power is receding, and for the first time in years, the architect of the king's strategy finds herself standing in the cold light of a brother's justice. For 60 years, the elite within the palace corridors and the cynical voices in the British press labelled Prince Edward as the weak link of the House of Windsor. They pointed to his exit from the Royal Marines and his early struggles in the creative industry as proof of a man who lacked the iron resolve of his father, Prince Philip, or the commanding presence of his sister, Princess Anne. They expected him to be the quietest of the Queen's children, a man who would always bow his head to the hierarchy and accept whatever crumbs were left from the royal table. That was their most expensive mistake. Edward's perceived weakness was, in reality, his ultimate tactical advantage. He allowed the king's advisors to underestimate him while he prepared a counterstrike that has now frozen the monarchy's private treasury. His silence over the past 18 months was not a sign of submission. It was a masterclass in forensic legal strategy, known internally as the Edward Maneuver. While King Charles was busy reshaping the public face of the monarchy, Edward was quietly letting the king walk into a legal minefield of his own making. The strategy was as patient as it was ruthless. First, Edward spent months observing as the king authorized the use of dividends from what is known as codicil. 7. A specific private fund that the late Queen Elizabeth II had carved out of the Windsor fortune. Second, Edward did not interrupt when Charles signed off on management orders for various private estates, orders that presumed a legal ownership the king did not possess. By remaining silent, Edward allowed a pattern of unauthorized behavior to be documented, creating a paper trail that no royal tradition could erase. The third and most devastating step occurred behind a veil of absolute secrecy. Edward hired a team of independent auditors, operating outside the royal household's influence, to conduct a comprehensive forensic review of the entire Norfolk private estate portfolio. While the king believed he was simply managing family land, Edward's team was proving that the legal deeds were never transferred to the crown. They were collecting evidence that the sovereign was, in fact, managing assets that were legally deeded to the Duke of Edinburgh. But if Edward provided the strategy, Sophie Wessex provided the iron will. Inside Bagshot Park, Sophie has been described as the secret weapon behind this newfound royal steel. She watched as the king and Camilla's slimmed-down vision began to systematically erase the futures of her children, Lady Louise and James, the Earl of Wessex. Sophie refused to let her children be turned into royal footnotes while their grandmother's true intentions were being ignored for the sake of the king's centralized power. According to a source close to the Duchess, she was heard telling a palace trustee in a chillingly calm tone, "Duty is a two-way street. If the king expects our loyalty, he must respect the Queen's legacy. We will not be sidelined from our own history." The king's inner circle mistook Edward's restraint for a lack of courage. They believed he would never dare to challenge the sovereign. They didn't realize that a hunter does not strike when the prey is alert. They wait for the prey to become arrogant. By allowing Charles to act as the owner of these billions for over a year and a half, Edward ensured that when the strike finally came, there would be no room for the king to argue it was a simple misunderstanding. The quiet rebel has effectively trapped the king in a legal corner from which there is no escape. As the sun sets over the palace today, the reality is sinking in. The man they thought was the weakest link has just become the most powerful player in the family's financial future. But what happens when a king is forced to admit he was wrong to the very man he once looked down upon? The most devastating blow to King Charles III this morning did not come from the high-priced attorneys in their black sedans. It came from the realization that his own heir, the Prince of Wales, has been operating in the shadows against him. We can now confirm that the true architect of this legal stalemate is not just Prince Edward, but a secret coalition formed within the walls of the Windsor estate. On February 20th, 2026, a monumental shift in royal power occurred behind the closed doors of Adelaide Cottage. This secret meeting, attended by Prince William, Catherine, and Prince Edward, served as the birthplace of the alliance that has now paralyzed the king's financial agenda. For King Charles, the discovery of this meeting is a personal and political betrayal. He has spent 18 months believing William was his most loyal soldier in the push for a centralized, slimmed-down monarchy. But the Prince of Wales was playing a much longer and more pragmatic game. According to sources familiar with the discussion at Adelaide Cottage, William made a chillingly calculated choice. He chose the long-term stability of his own future throne over his father's immediate financial ego. William reportedly looked at his uncle and stated with absolute clarity, "I will not inherit a kingdom defined by family litigation. We cannot survive a Harry version 2.0. William's fear was not unfounded. He has seen firsthand the devastation caused when a senior member of the family feels marginalized and financially strangled. He understood that if Edward were pushed into a corner over his mother's private will, the Duke of Edinburgh might be forced to take measures that would expose the inner financial workings of the crown to the public eye. William reportedly told his father's advisers in a separate, later briefing, "I am not here to defend a legacy of mismanagement. I am here to ensure there is a monarchy left for me to lead." However, the driving force behind this alliance was Catherine, the Princess of Wales. Catherine has often been viewed as the peacemaker, but this morning's revelations show her as a formidable strategic broker. She understood that the King and Camilla's plan to thicken the privy purse by stripping the Wessexes of their independence was a direct threat to her own future. Catherine is acutely aware that Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh, is the most industrious working royal in the firm. If Sophie and Edward were sidelined or alienated, the entire weight of the monarchy's grueling public schedule would fall solely on Catherine's shoulders. In a private moment during that February 20th meeting, Catherine reportedly told Sophie, "We are the backbone of this institution's daily life. If they break your independence, they break the system. I will not carry this entire weight alone because of a shadow agenda." By aligning with Edward, Catherine and William have effectively blocked Camilla's attempt to centralize power. This secret coalition has created a new power center that has left the King and Queen Camilla isolated. The King's assumption that his heir would automatically support his financial consolidation has proven to be his most significant oversight. As the sun reaches its peak over London today, the reality is setting in. The King may hold the scepter, but his heir holds the keys to family unity. Camilla, who believed she was building an unassailable dynasty for Charles, now finds herself facing a united front of the next generation and the Queen's favourite son. The King is standing on a balcony of his own making, but the ground beneath him has shifted. The question everyone is now asking is, how does a sovereign rule when he realizes his heir has already begun to dismantle his father's vision to protect his own future? The isolation of the King is no longer a rumor, it is a documented reality. At exactly 10:30 a.m. on this Friday, March 13th, inside the historic Oak Room of Buckingham Palace, the ancient prestige of the British monarchy collided with the cold, modern reality of the law. King Charles III, a man whose profile is stamped onto every coin and banknote in the realm, was forced to confront a reality that no sovereign ever expects to face. He was no longer the authority in the room. This was the moment of legal execution, a scene that insiders describe as the most humiliating hour of the King's reign. Surrounding the King were not his usual courtiers, but a team of solicitors who held a series of documents that effectively stripped away his assumed power over the family's private fortune. The King was presented with what are legally termed letters of restitution. These were not mere administrative updates or ceremonial papers. They were official admissions of asset mismanagement. By signing these documents, Charles was forced to formally acknowledge that he had spent nearly 2 years exercising control over property and funds that were never legally his to touch. According to a witness to the proceedings, the King initially hesitated, his hand hovering over the desk as he looked at the senior executor. The King reportedly asked in a strained voice, "Is there no other path for a family matter of this nature?" To which the attorney responded with chilling neutrality, "Your Majesty, when private funds are misallocated, the only path is the one that leads back to the rightful owner. The law does not distinguish between a citizen and a king when it comes to a signed will. The inventory of assets being forcibly transferred back to Prince Edward is staggering in both its financial and historical weight. First on the list is a premier private estate in Norfolk, separate from the Crown-owned lands of Sandringham, valued at an estimated £35 million. This is land that Charles had already begun integrating into his grand agricultural vision for the monarchy. Second is a massive portfolio of blue-chip stocks and offshore investments that generate a profit of millions of pounds every single year. These were the secret dividends that Charles had been using to bankroll his new royal projects. Finally, the list includes a priceless collection of personal jewelry and artifacts, items that were never part of the royal collection and therefore never belonged to the state. They were the late Queen's personal belongings, and she had left them all to Edward. The financial fallout is even more devastating. Because Charles had been treating these profits as his own for 18 months, he has now officially become a debtor to his younger brother. The letters of restitution require the king to repay every penny of the unauthorized draws he made from these accounts since September 2022. The man who holds the scepter is now legally required to reimburse the Duke of Edinburgh for nearly 2 years of misspent income. It is a reversal of power that has left the palace staff in a state of shock. In the world of kings and queens, tradition and the divine right of the eldest son have always been supreme. But in the Oak Room this morning, black ink proved to be more powerful than a gold crown. The lawyers demonstrated that in the 21st century, even a king is bound by the four corners of a legal document. As the king finally placed his signature on the papers, the silence in the room was absolute. He wasn't just signing away land and money, he was signing away the illusion of his own absolute financial authority. The Vung Mien, the crown, remains on his head, but the power of the family treasury has shifted. As the legal team packed their dossiers and prepared to leave, the king remained seated in the Oak Room, staring at the empty space where his mother's private empire used to be. The question now isn't just about the money, it's about the precedent. If the king can be defeated by a will in the Oak Room, what other assumptions of his reign are about to be challenged? The ink is dry, but the stains on the king's authority may be permanent. As the sun sets over the iconic towers of Buckingham Palace on this Friday evening, the long shadows stretching across the mall reflect a monarchy that has been fundamentally altered. The era of the sovereign's absolute financial dominion has come to a sudden and unceremonious end. King Charles III may still wear the crown, and his profile may still grace the nation's currency, but for the first time in his reign, he no longer holds the absolute power of financial life and death over his own family. The Windsor Black File has not just redistributed wealth, it has redistributed authority. The palace is now bracing for one of three inevitable scenarios. The first is what courtiers call a fragile peace. This would be a carefully choreographed display of royal unity, where the King and the Duke of Edinburgh appear side by side at upcoming ceremonies, masking the legal scars with perfect public smiles. In this version of the future, the family agrees to keep the rift behind closed doors, protecting the institution at the cost of personal trust. But after the humiliation in the Oak Room this morning, many wonder if the king is capable of such restraint. The second, and far more volatile scenario, is Camilla's retaliation. Insiders suggest that the Queen Consort is already urging the king to look for a way to strike back at Edward and Sophie. If the king cannot control the money, he still controls the honours. There are whispers that the palace could move to review Edward's military patronages or even question the long-term status of his ducal title. It would be a scorched earth policy, a way to punish the quiet rebel by stripping him of the prestige that his newly reclaimed millions cannot buy. However, the most likely reality is a permanent palace Cold War. This is a state of perpetual gridlock where the king holds the scepter, but his younger brother holds the keys to the private vault. In this new order, the king will be forced to negotiate with his own family for every major private project he wishes to fund. The sovereign has become a tenant in his own legacy, governed by the very laws he was born to represent. The crown has been shaken, not by an external revolution, but by the internal ambition of a king who overreached and a queen who underestimated her own family. But as the legal teams retreat and the palace doors are locked for the night, one chilling detail remains. At the very bottom of the Windsor Black File, beneath the Norfolk deeds and the stock portfolios, lies a single document marked the Cornwall Contingency. It is a document that reportedly contains the late Queen's specific instructions regarding the Duchy of Cornwall instructions that King Charles has kept hidden even from his heir, Prince William. If the Prince of Wales discovers that his own father has been withholding information about his future inheritance, the Wales alliance may turn into a total royal collapse. The war for the soul and the treasury of the House of Windsor is only just beginning, and the stakes have never been higher. Do you stand with King Charles and his vision for a centralized, powerful crown, or do you stand with the justice of Prince Edward and the late Queen's final wishes? We want to hear your thoughts, so leave a comment below with either crown or justice. If you found this investigative breakdown valuable, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel right now. By subscribing and turning on notifications, you ensure that you are the first to know when we reveal the contents of that secret Cornwall document. This is a story of power, money, and betrayal that is changing by the hour. Don't miss the next chapter of the Windsor Black File. Stay informed and stay with us. March 12, 2026, 08:15 a.m. London is shivering under a grey mist, but inside the iron gates of Buckingham Palace, a fire has been lit that threatens to consume the very fabric of the House of Windsor. This is not just a royal update, this is a seismic shift in the British monarchy. Breaking news hitting the wires less than 60 minutes ago reveals a scene no one expected to witness. Zara Tindall, the late Queen Elizabeth's favourite granddaughter and the woman known for her unshakable composure, was seen fleeing the sovereign's private entrance in visible distress. Her eyes were red, her face etched with a look of pure betrayal. The cause? An emergency protocol titled Directive 702, signed by King Charles III just moments before their encounter. On the surface, it looks like administrative paperwork. In reality, it is a cold-blooded tactical strike. Before we peel back the layers of this high-stakes internal war, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. It is the only way to stay ahead of the curve as we track this developing crisis. Drop a comment below with the word justice if you believe Zara deserves better than this. The timeline is precise. At 07:45 a.m., Zara was summoned for what was described as a private family breakfast. But there were no cameras and, more importantly, no Princess Anne present to defend her daughter. According to sources close to the master of the household, the air in the room was glacial. King Charles sat across from his niece, but he wasn't alone. Seated beside him was Queen Camilla, holding a leather-bound folder that insiders are now calling the Extinction Dossier. The king reportedly spoke first, his voice devoid of its usual warmth. He didn't offer tea, he offered an ultimatum. The voiceover account of the exchange is chilling. The king allegedly stated, and I quote, "The era of the dual identity royal is over, Zara. You cannot occupy the shadow of the throne while profiting from the light of the marketplace." Zara, stunned, reportedly whispered back, "Is this about the family or is this about the brand?" To which the king, prompted by a sharp glance from Camilla, replied, "There is no difference anymore." What followed was the formal reading of the huge announcement on royal titles. Charles has officially invoked an ancient prerogative to freeze the public association of any non-working royal with the Crown brand. This means Zara's commercial partnerships, her public appearances, and even her presence at upcoming state events are now under a total administrative lock. This is the emergency protocol in action, a mechanism designed to strip the untitled royals of their remaining influence to bolster the standing of the king and queen. The collapse of trust was instantaneous. At 08:10 a.m., the door to the king's study swung open. Zara didn't walk out, she bolted. Those in the hallway heard a final, heartbreaking exchange. Zara reportedly turned to her uncle and said, "My mother warned me this day would come, but I didn't think it would be you who swung the axe." The king's response was a heavy, suffocating silence. The ripple effect began within seconds. Across town at Kensington Palace, the reaction was swift and unprecedented. Prince William, who was scheduled to lead a high-profile investiture ceremony at 0900, abruptly cancelled all engagements. His office cited unforeseen circumstances, but the truth is far more explosive. A staffer leaked that William was seen in a heated telephone argument, his voice echoing through the corridors, shouting, "This is a bridge too far, even for her." The her in question is widely believed to be Queen Camilla. For months, whispers have circulated that Camilla has been the architect of a new, leaner monarchy, one that removes anyone who might overshadow the core couple. Zara, with her skyrocketing popularity and Olympic prestige, was the first target. This isn't just about titles, it's about an existential threat to the Windsor legacy. Why would the king risk alienating his most loyal niece? And what did Catherine, the Princess of Wales, find in that dossier that forced her to make a secret, midnight call to Zara's home in Gloucestershire just hours before this confrontation? We are tracking every movement. The palace is in lockdown, but the leaks are coming faster than they can plug them. This is part 1 of our deep dive investigation. Stay with us. Hit that notification bell right now because part 2 is dropping shortly, and you will not believe the move Princess Anne is preparing to make in retaliation. The Queen of the Shadows has made her move, but the Princess Royal is about to flip the board. Subscribe now so you don't miss the moment the monarchy truly breaks. To understand why Zara Tindall left Buckingham Palace in tears at 08:10 a.m., you have to look past the king. You have to look at the shadow standing precisely 2 steps behind the throne. For months, a silent revolution has been brewing within the palace walls, orchestrated by a woman who has spent decades mastering the art of the long game. This is the era of the Camilla Directive. Behind the scenes, the Queen Consort has been the primary architect of a document known as the New Code of Conduct for Non-Working Royals. It is not a suggestion, it is a cage made of fine parchment. The mechanism of this drama is purely financial and deeply personal. Camilla's vision for a streamlined monarchy is not just about reducing the number of people on the balcony, it is about total brand control. Sources from within the Lord Chamberlain's office suggest that Camilla has grown increasingly frustrated with Zara's commercial success. To the public, Zara is a self-made Olympic medalist. To Camilla, she is a liability who commodifies the royal image. The Queen reportedly views Zara's multi-million-dollar partnerships with global giants like Rolex and Land Rover as a direct challenge to the exclusivity of the crown. The contrast between these two women could not be more striking. While Camilla is often seen draped in archival silk and historic jewels, representing the rigid traditions of the past, Zara is the face of the modern, rugged, and relatable royal. She is frequently photographed in mud-splattered riding gear, a woman who earns her own way. But according to high-level leaks, Camilla believes this down-to-earth persona is actually thinning the royal bloodline's prestige. During a closed-door meeting in late January 2026, the tension reached a breaking point. A reconstructed account of Camilla's instructions to the royal branding team reveals a chilling directive. She reportedly stated, and I quote, "We cannot have the prestige of the House of Windsor auctioned off to the highest bidder by those who do not bear the burden of the state. If they wish to be private citizens, they must become truly private. No titles, no brand associations, no exceptions." This was the birth of the economic siege. By pressuring King Charles to sign Directive 702, Camilla effectively cut the ground out from under Zara's feet. This new code demands that any royal with a blood connection to the king must submit every commercial contract for Queen's approval. It is a tactical move designed to force Zara into a corner, give up her independent income, or be completely erased from the family's public history. This isn't about saving the taxpayers' money. This is about who holds the keys to the Windsor legacy. Palace insiders are calling it a calculated cleansing. Camilla is betting that by stripping the untitled royals of their financial independence, she can ensure that the only light shining on the monarchy comes from the king and herself. But this move has ignored one crucial factor: the deep-seated loyalty of the next generation. As Zara fled the palace, the phone lines between Gloucestershire and Adelaide Cottage were already burning. Camilla has launched her offensive, but she may have underestimated the alliance currently forming in the wake of Zara's tears. The question now isn't just about Zara's contracts, it's about whether this directive has just sparked a civil war that even the king cannot stop. The files on William's desk suggest the retaliation is already being mapped out. While the king and queen sit within the reinforced walls of Buckingham Palace, a counter-offensive is being quietly mounted in the shadows of the British countryside. Prince William, the Prince of Wales, now finds himself trapped at a lethal moral crossroads. As the future king, he is expected to uphold his father's vision of a streamlined, ironclad monarchy, a vision largely fueled by the strategic mind of Queen Camilla. But there is one factor Camilla's Directive 702 failed to account for: the unbreakable bond between William and the woman he considers his emotional anchor, Zara Tindall. For decades, Zara has been William's safe harbour. She was the one who could make him laugh when the weight of the crown felt too heavy, the one cousin who never wanted anything from him but his company. To target Zara is to strike at the very heart of William's inner circle. High-level sources suggest that the Prince of Wales is privately livid, viewing this move as an unnecessary act of aggression against a family member who has been nothing but loyal. However, he is the heir to the throne. Openly defying the king and queen would trigger a constitutional crisis the monarchy cannot afford. This is where the Wales factor becomes truly explosive. While William is forced to maintain a facade of royal unity, the Princess of Wales, Catherine, has reportedly taken matters into her own hands. We can now reveal that at 2200 hours on the night of March 11, 2026, less than 12 hours before the confrontation at Buckingham Palace, a discreet, unlisted vehicle was spotted slipping through the back gates of Gatcombe Park, the Gloucestershire estate of Princess Anne. Inside that vehicle was Catherine. The meeting was clandestine, scrubbed from any official royal diary. Catherine, who has spent years navigating the suffocating intricacies of the system, reportedly met with Zara in a high-stakes strategy session. Those close to the Gloucestershire circle describe a scene of intense solidarity. Catherine knows better than anyone what it feels like to be caught in the crosshairs of palace machinery. A narrated account of their conversation suggests that Catherine wasn't there just to offer a shoulder to cry on. She was there as a messenger. The Princess of Wales reportedly told Zara, and I quote, "William cannot speak yet, but he is watching. Do not sign anything until the board is reset." This clandestine alliance suggests that the younger generation of royals is no longer willing to play by the old rules of silent submission. Catherine is playing the role of the secret intermediary, the bridge between a furious William and a devastated Zara. This internal friction is the biggest obstacle Camilla's plan has ever faced. Camilla's strategy relied on the working royals standing together in a unified front. She didn't expect the Princess of Wales to go rogue in the middle of the night. By offering Zara a lifeline, Catherine has effectively signalled that the House of Wales will not be complicit in Zara's professional execution. The documents on William's desk at Kensington Palace are no longer just about charity work and state visits. They are maps of a fractured family. When William abruptly cancelled his 0900 engagement on March 12th, it wasn't because of a scheduling conflict. It was a protest. He was signalling to the king and, more importantly, to his stepmother that the bridge too far had finally been crossed. The question now is, what was in the dossier that Catherine reportedly handed to Zara during that midnight meeting? And how does it link back to the king's own private financial records? The game of chess has turned into a game of survival. The world was bracing for a coronation-style celebration, perhaps a late gift of a title for the woman who has carried the Windsor legacy with more grace than those born with crowns. But the huge announcement from King Charles III, issued at 1100 hours on March 12, 2026, was not a gift. It was a surgical strike. The headlines had speculated that Zara might finally be named a princess to shore up the monarchy's popularity. The reality is far more chilling. Charles has not granted a title, he has issued a notice of influence withdrawal. This is the legal guillotine that sent Zara Tindall reeling. To understand the gravity of this moment, we must look at the 1917 protocol established by King George V. For over a century, that rule merely dictated who got to be called Your Royal Highness. But under the new 2026 decree, reportedly drafted in high-level secrecy between the King and Queen Camilla, the rule has been weaponized. The King has introduced the blood royal commercial sanction. This new mechanism dictates that any individual within 25 degrees of the throne, regardless of whether they hold a title, is now legally barred from leveraging their proximity to the sovereign for private enterprise. In plain English, Zara Tindall's career is being dismantled. Every equestrian sponsorship, every luxury brand deal, and every public appearance that relies on her status as the King's niece is now under the direct veto power of the Crown. The drama behind this announcement is a Shakespearean tragedy of modern proportions. King Charles now finds himself trapped in a lethal vice. On one side, he has Queen Camilla, who is pushing for a scorched earth policy to ensure that the core monarchy remains the only relevant brand in the United Kingdom. On the other side is his sister, Princess Anne, the woman who has been Charles's most steadfast defender for 7 decades. According to sources within the royal household, the confrontation that preceded the announcement was devastating. Charles reportedly attempted to explain the decree to Anne as a necessary evolution for the institution's survival. The voiceover account of Anne's response is the stuff of palace legend. She did not yell. She did not plead. She simply stood, looked her brother in the eye, and reportedly said, "You are not protecting the institution, Charles. You are feeding it its own children to satisfy a hunger that isn't yours. The fallout is unprecedented." Since the announcement went live, the silence coming from Gatcombe Park has been deafening. Princess Anne, usually the most industrious member of the family, has cleared her diary for the next 14 days. In the world of royal diplomacy, silence is the ultimate weapon. It is the calm before a hurricane. What the public doesn't see is the logistical nightmare now unfolding. Zara's legal team is reportedly reviewing the 1917 update, searching for a loophole that Charles and Camilla may have missed. But the King's announcement was clear. The decoupling of the family from the brand is absolute. This is no longer a debate about who is a princess and who is a commoner. This is a battle over the right to exist outside the King's shadow. As the sun sets on this historic day, one question lingers in the corridors of power. If the King is willing to strip his own niece of her livelihood to appease a new order, who is next? The dossiers currently being moved between palace offices suggest that Zara Tindall was merely the first domino. The next name on the list is one that will shake the foundations of the House of Wales itself. The storm isn't coming, it's already here, and Princess Anne's silence is the loudest warning we have ever received. The strategy of silence is often more devastating than a 1,000-page press release. By 1300 hours on March 13, 2026, it became clear that the palace's tactical strike had failed to account for one critical variable: the power of the underdog. While Queen Camilla and the King's advisors expected Zara Tindall to retreat into the shadows of Gloucestershire to lick her wounds and renegotiate her contracts in private, she chose a path of radical visibility. Less than 24 hours after fleeing Buckingham Palace in tears, Zara appeared at a high-profile equestrian gala in London. There was no official royal escort, no palace-sanctioned security detail. She arrived in a sleek, dark vehicle, dressed not in the mourning black of a defeated royal, but in a bold, defiant navy. Those present described the atmosphere as electric. As she walked the red carpet, the flashbulbs didn't just capture a niece of the king, they captured the people's princess of the modern age. The reaction from the British elite and the global sporting community was instantaneous and overwhelming. We have obtained internal communication logs from several major luxury brands, the very companies Camilla's directive sought to block. Instead of distancing themselves, these brands are reportedly doubling down. One senior executive was overheard telling a colleague at the gala, and I quote, "The king can take her title, but he cannot take her talent. We signed the athlete, not the accessory." This is where the data becomes a nightmare for the king's communications team. Real-time media sentiment analysis conducted between March 12 and March 13 reveals a catastrophic shift in public perception. Zara's approval ratings have surged by 15% in less than 48 hours, hitting an all-time high of 82%. In contrast, the sentiment regarding Queen Camilla has plummeted into critical territory, with 64% of social media discourse labeling the new directive as vindictive and out of touch. The digital footprint of this silent rebellion is staggering. A narrated account from a high-ranking palace staffer describes the scene inside the king's private quarters as the data began to roll in. The staffer claims that when the king was shown the surge in Zara's popularity, he turned to Camilla and reportedly said, "We didn't just silence her, we made her a martyr." Camilla's response was reportedly a cold, calculated dismissal. Martyrs are temporary. The institution is permanent. But is it? The silent rebellion is proving that in 2026, influence is more valuable than authority. Zara has not uttered a single word to the BBC or the tabloids. She hasn't posted a cryptic message on Instagram. She has simply existed authentically, professionally, and publicly. By refusing to play the victim, she has made the palace look like the aggressor. The sporting world has rallied behind her with a ferocity that has caught the Home Office off guard. Plans are reportedly in motion for a show of solidarity at the upcoming international trials, where athletes from across the Commonwealth are rumoured to be wearing Z pins on their lapels. This isn't just a family feud anymore, it is a cultural movement. Camilla may hold the keys to the royal archives and the power to draft new codes of conduct. But Zara Tindall holds the one thing the Queen has struggled to secure for decades: the genuine, unforced affection of the public. The princess who never was has become the leader the people didn't know they were waiting for. And as the sun sets on this second day of the crisis, a new, even more dangerous document is rumoured to be circulating in the legal offices of Princess Anne. If Zara won't speak, her mother certainly will. The question is no longer if the king will back down, it's how much of the monarchy will be left standing when he does. The next 48 hours will determine if the House of Windsor can survive the very war it started. March 14, 2026. 0900 hours. The epicenter of the royal crisis has shifted. The battle is no longer being fought in the headlines of London or the equestrian fields of Gloucestershire. The focus is now moving 300 miles north to the fog-drenched highlands of Scotland. Balmoral Castle is being prepared for an extraordinary family gathering that the official palace press office is calling a routine retreat. But behind the reinforced gates, insiders are calling it the Windsor Tribunal, a high-stakes summit that will determine the absolute future of the British monarchy. This is the moment of truth for what intelligence sources are now calling the Gloucestershire Alliance. Prince William, Princess Anne, and Zara Tindall are reportedly coordinating their arrival to ensure they enter the castle as a unified front. Across from them stands the new establishment, King Charles III, and the architect of the current chaos, Queen Camilla. The stakes could not be higher. If the king refuses to rescind the notice of influence withdrawal against Zara, he faces the very real possibility of a generational mutiny. The investigating question that is currently haunting the halls of Kensington Palace is this: if William chooses to stand publicly with Zara, is this the first fatal crack in the reign of Charles III? For the first time in modern history, the heir to the throne is in direct ideological conflict with the sovereign's consort. A narrated account from a senior equerry suggests that William has already prepared a counter-manifesto. He reportedly told his advisors at 0800 this morning, and I quote, "We are not just protecting a cousin, we are protecting the relevance of the next 40 years. If the crown becomes a cage, no one will want to wear it." The tension within the alliance is palpable. Princess Anne is rumoured to be carrying a dossier of her own, a record of every sacrifice she and her children have made to keep the monarchy afloat during its darkest hours. If Camilla pushes for a total administrative lock on Zara's life, Anne is reportedly prepared to withdraw her support from all royal duties indefinitely. Without the Princess Royal, the king's slimmed-down monarchy doesn't just look lean, it looks hollow. But the most dangerous player in this Scottish summit may be the one who has remained the quietest. Catherine, the Princess of Wales. While the King and Queen expect a debate over protocols and 1917 regulations, Catherine and Zara are reportedly focused on the court of public opinion. They know that while the King has the law, they have the people. The Balmoral Summit is not just about a title or a contract, it is a battle for the soul of the House of Windsor. Will Charles choose the rigid order of his wife or the living, breathing loyalty of his son and niece? The doors to Balmoral are about to close. What happens inside those grey stone walls will either heal the rift or shatter the family into two competing factions. The world is watching, and the clock is ticking toward a 0 hour that no one can turn back. This is only the beginning of our deep dive investigation into the fractured monarchy. We are currently finalizing a massive breakthrough file on the shadow war between the two women who will decide the king's legacy. Queen Camilla and Catherine, the Princess of Wales. This is a dossier you cannot afford to miss, detailing the secret power moves happening behind closed doors. Do you want to see the full report on the War of the Future Queens? Then let us know right now. Leave a comment with the code WIDE, WAR below, and hit that subscribe button to join our investigative community. Make sure your notifications are turned on, because when the Balmoral Summit breaks, you will be the first to know the truth. Like this video if you stand with the next generation, and stay tuned, the real drama is just starting to surface. 6 a.m., March 16th, 2026. We are breaking silence on a tectonic shift occurring behind the heavy stone walls of Windsor Castle. While the world watches the king's recovery, a silent, surgical strike has been executed against the extended family of Queen Camilla. This is not speculation. This is the result of a documented security escalation that has effectively erased the Parker Bowles name from the inner sanctum of the monarchy. The breaking point occurred on a freezing Tuesday morning in late December 2025. At exactly 8:15 a.m., a black Range Rover carrying Tom Parker Bowles and his children approached gate number 4 at Windsor. This is the discreet entrance typically reserved for family and high-level staff. For years, this vehicle was waved through with a respectful nod. But on that morning, the bollards remained up. The heavy iron gates stayed shut. A senior security officer stepped forward, clipboard in hand. According to a leaked account from a witness on the scene, the officer's tone was polite but immovable. He reportedly told the Queen's son, quote, "I'm sorry, sir, but your clearance code has been flagged as inactive. We have received an updated priority access list from the Office of the Prince of Wales. Your names are no longer on the authorized roster for immediate entry." End quote. This was no technical glitch. This was an ambush. Tom Parker Bowles was reportedly seen making a frantic phone call, presumably to his mother inside the castle, but the gate remained closed for 45 minutes before the vehicle was forced to turn around. The message was sent, and it was loud. The Windsor gates are closing to anyone without a direct bloodline to the throne. If you believe Prince William is right to prioritize the privacy of his own children over his step-family, hit the like button right now and subscribe. Your engagement ensures this investigation stays live despite palace pressure to take it down. While Buckingham Palace's press office scrambled to frame this as a standard update to security protocols following a routine Home Office review, our sources inside the map room at Adelaide Cottage tell a much more aggressive story. 3 weeks before the Gate Number 4 incident, Prince William sat at a mahogany desk, illuminated only by a desk lamp. He was reviewing a thick dossier from the Royalty and Specialist Protection Unit. With a single signature, he authorized a protection escalation decree. This document was not just about cameras and guards, it was a legal mechanism to redefine who constitutes the inner circle. By invoking a specific Home Office mandate designed to protect high-priority successors Prince George, Princess Charlotte, and Prince Louis William, effectively created a barrier that Queen Camilla's grandchildren cannot cross. One palace insider reported a tense exchange between William and a senior advisor during the signing. When asked if the Queen should be consulted first, the Prince of Wales reportedly replied, quote, "This isn't about politics. It's about the perimeter. My children's environment must be controlled, predictable, and restricted to those with a constitutional role, no exceptions." End quote. This is the silent purge. How does it work? It follows a 3-step mechanism. Step 1. Reclassify the Parker Bowles family as private citizens rather than extended royal family. Step 2. Trigger the Home Office safety clause, which mandates that non-royal civilians cannot have unvetted 24/7 access to the heirs. Step 3. Enforce the exclusion at the gates. William is using the very laws meant to protect his children as a shield to distance his household from Camilla's side of the family. He is not just a father, he is a future king acting as a gatekeeper. By the time King Charles realizes the extent of the isolation, the new security protocols will be a permanent fixture of the Windsor landscape. But the most chilling part of this story isn't the gate being closed. It's the reaction from the woman who has seen every royal scandal for the last 50 years. Princess Anne was reportedly present when the news of the Gate Number 4 incident reached the breakfast table. Her response? Absolute silence, no intervention. No defense for Camilla's son. Why is the Princess Royal standing by as William dismantles the Parker Bowles influence? And what does this mean for Queen Camilla herself? If her children are being locked out, is her own position at Windsor more fragile than we ever imagined? Leave a comment below with the word fortress if you think William is being too harsh, or protector if you think he is doing what must be done. We are monitoring the situation as it develops this morning. Stay tuned, because the true motive behind the Princess Royal's silence is about to be revealed in our next update. This is a breaking investigation. Do not go anywhere. To understand the true scale of the isolation facing the Parker Bowles family, we have to look past the emotional headlines and into the cold, clinical world of the Metropolitan Police's secure database. The transition began not with a public announcement, but with a digital update to the RHP, the Royalty and Specialist Protection Unit. This elite branch of the Met Police is responsible for the physical safety of the sovereign, but its operational priorities are dictated by the person holding the keys to the estate. As of mid-March 2026, those keys have effectively been handed to the Prince of Wales. The primary document triggering this shift is a classified memorandum titled The Windsor Perimeter Realignment. Under this new directive, the era of the unrestricted guest has officially ended. For decades, the British monarchy functioned on a system of informal trust, where family members and their close relations held free pass status, a biometric clearance that allowed them to bypass standard security checks at Windsor's inner gates. But William has dismantled this system, replacing it with a rigid 3-step royal blood filter. The mechanism of this blood filter works with mathematical precision. Step 1. Classification. The security roster has been divided into 2 distinct tiers. Tier 1 consists of core bloodline members, those with constitutional standing, and their immediate households. Tier 2 is now labelled as associated non-titled persons. This is the category where Tom Parker Bowles, Laura Lopes, and their children now find themselves. By stripping them of Tier 1 status, William has effectively revoked their ability to enter royal residences without a specific, pre-approved reason for each visit. Step 2 is the authority trigger. In previous years, King Charles acted as the final arbiter of who was welcome. However, as the king has decreased his public engagements to 80% of his previous schedule to focus on intensive treatment, a legal delegation of estate management has been activated. This transfer of power allows the Prince of Wales to oversee the daily administrative and security logistics of the Windsor estate. A palace insider recalls a moment in the security briefing room where a high-ranking Met police official asked for clarification on the status of the Queen's grandchildren. William's response was reportedly short and definitive. Quote, "The protocol follows the title. If there is no title, there is no permanent clearance. They are guests of the sovereign, not residents of the crown." End quote. Step 3 is the operational consequence. The Parker Bowles family has transitioned from being part of the furniture to being guests by appointment only. This means that every time a member of Camilla's family wishes to see her at Windsor, a formal request must be logged through the Prince of Wales's security office at least 48 hours in advance. Each request is vetted, each arrival is logged, each departure is monitored. The psychological impact of this mechanism is profound. It creates a glass wall between the Queen and her biological family. While Camilla remains at the heart of the monarchy, her children are now treated with the same level of scrutiny as foreign dignitaries or high-level staff. The free pass is gone, and in its place is a bureaucratic barrier that reinforces a single, undeniable truth. William is no longer just the heir. He is the active administrator of the Windsor fortress. This raises an unsettling question that is currently whispering through the corridors of the palace. If William is willing to use such clinical, legalistic methods to sideline his stepmother's family while his father is still on the throne, what happens when the delegation of power becomes total? The shadow of the future king is growing longer, and the cold efficiency of the RHP is only the beginning of a much larger blueprint for the new reign. The real mystery, however, lies in why the one person capable of challenging this authority, Princess Anne, has remained so hauntingly quiet. To understand the sudden freezing of the Windsor gates, we must look at the blueprint of a half-century-old grievance. This is not a sudden outburst of anger. It is the final chapter of a meticulously documented timeline of exclusion. Every empire has a ledger of debts, and for the House of Windsor, the first entry was written in 1973. The year 1973. London. A moment that redefined the emotional landscape of the palace. Andrew Parker Bowles married Camilla Shand. To the public, it was a high society wedding. To the inner circle, it was the moment Princess Anne's heart was reportedly shattered. Anne had been deeply involved with Andrew, but the rigid protocols of the time made a marriage impossible. When Andrew chose Camilla, a silent but permanent rift was created. For 50 years, Anne has watched the woman who married the man she loved climb the ranks of the monarchy. This historical scar is the primary reason why, in 2026, the Princess Royal refuses to lift a finger to help Camilla's children. The timeline then shifts to a deceptive era of peace. April 2011. Buckingham Palace. On the day of William and Catherine's wedding, the world saw a picture of unity. Eliza Lopes, Camilla's granddaughter, was a flower girl, even seen being lifted by then Prince Charles on the iconic balcony. It was the high water mark of the blended monarchy experiment. Analysts now believe this was a strategic move by Charles to integrate Camilla's side of the family into the royal fabric, while William was still navigating his own new marriage. But even then, sources say William was cautious, observing the ease with which outsiders were accessing the most private sanctums of the crown. The catalyst for the current lockdown occurred in May 2023, Westminster Abbey. The coronation. In a move that shocked the traditional blue-blooded aristocracy, Queen Camilla's grandsons were appointed as pages of honor. They wore the state uniforms. They held the king's robes alongside Prince George. For the traditionalists, and specifically for William, this was an overreach. It was no longer just a family gathering, it was a ceremonial encroachment. The sight of non-titled Parker Bowles children occupying a space reserved for the bloodline royal family was the final warning sign for the future king. The legal precedent for the purge was set in December 2025 at Sandringham. In a move of surgical precision, King Charles stripped his own brother, Prince Andrew, of his final remaining honorary titles and forced a total withdrawal from public life. William was not just a witness to this, he was reportedly the architect. He saw that the institution could and would delete its own members to protect the brand. If a blood prince like Andrew could be erased, what protection did the Parker Bowles family have? Now we arrive at April 2026. The transition is complete. The Windsor lockdown is no longer a rumor, it is a visible reality. For the first time in over a decade, the Parker Bowles family has vanished from the guest lists of every internal royal event. No Sunday services at Royal Lodge. No private dinners at the castle. The family that once stood on the balcony is now effectively ghosts within the system. But why now? And why has Princess Anne transitioned from a distant observer to a silent ally in William's campaign? The answer lies in a series of private conversations held within the walls of Adelaide Cottage, where a new set of rules has been drafted, rules that redefine what it means to be a Windsor in the age of William. The ledger is being balanced, and the next entry in this timeline involves a document that Queen Camilla never expected to see. The most chilling aspect of the Windsor lockdown is not found in the iron gates or the security bollards, but in the calculated silence of the woman known as the monarchy's iron backbone. To understand why Prince William's purge has been so successful, we must examine the psychological profile of Princess Anne. For decades, Anne has functioned as the ultimate arbiter of royal standards, and in the spring of 2026, her silence has become the loudest endorsement of William's New World Order. The first concrete evidence of Anne's cold concurrence appeared in the April 2025 issue of Tatler magazine. In a rare and meticulously vetted interview, the Princess Royal spoke at length about the state of the monarchy. She was uncharacteristically warm toward Queen Camilla, praising her outstanding understanding of her role and the vital difference she makes to the king's well-being. However, royal analysts quickly noticed a surgical omission. Across several thousand words of praise for Camilla the Queen, Anne never once mentioned the Parker Bowles children or grandchildren. In the high-stakes world of royal public relations, what is left unsaid is often more significant than what is printed. By praising Camilla as an individual servant of the crown while ignoring her biological family, Anne was setting a psychological boundary. This was the erasure by praise tactic. She was signaling to the establishment that Camilla's value is tied strictly to her service to King Charles, and that this value does not extend to her descendants. Anne was effectively prepping the public for a future where Camilla stands alone at the top of the hierarchy, disconnected from the Parker Bowles lineage. But Anne's role is not merely symbolic. She holds the historic and formidable title of Gold Stick in Waiting. While many see this as a ceremonial role performed at the coronation, it carries profound weight within the security and administrative structures of the palace. The Gold Stick is the sovereign's personal protector. Within the internal committees that govern royal estate security and the Metropolitan Police's RHP unit, Anne's voice carries the weight of a decree. When Prince William drafted the Protection Escalation Decree at Adelaide Cottage, it would have crossed Anne's desk. As the guardian of the sovereign, if Anne had raised a single objection, the plan to block the Parker Bowles family would have been stalled. She didn't. Instead, her silence acted as a passive veto against Camilla's family. In the eyes of the Privy Council and the security chiefs, Anne's lack of intervention provided the legal and moral cover William needed to act. It was a signal that the old guard and the future king were in total alignment. Anne understands a fundamental truth that Camilla's family is now learning the hard way. The survival of the monarchy depends on the principle of exclusion. To keep the crown sacred, the circle must remain small. By allowing William to gatekeeper the Windsor estate, Anne is ensuring that the mistakes of the past, the blurring of lines between royalty and celebrity, are not repeated. As of this morning, March 16, 2026, the Princess Royal continues her grueling schedule of engagements, appearing alongside the Queen with a smile that many insiders describe as professionally distant. But beneath the surface, the tactical alliance between the aunt and the nephew has created an impenetrable wall. This leads us to a disturbing reality for those currently locked out of gate number 4. If the hardest-working royal and the future king have both agreed on your exclusion, there is no higher court of appeal. The question now is not if the Parker-Bowles family will return, but how much further this royal blood filter will go as the king's reign enters its most delicate phase. The clock is ticking toward a critical threshold in the history of the British monarchy. As of this morning, March 16, 2026, a silent countdown has begun. The deadline is December 2026. This is the projected date when Buckingham Palace insiders expect King Charles to reduce his official workload by a staggering 50% to undergo a new, more intensive phase of medical treatment. In the vacuum created by the King's retreat, Prince William is not just stepping up, he is cleaning house. The pressure on the Prince of Wales is immense. For William, the survival of the crown in the mid-21st century depends on a sanitized image. He views the Parker-Bowles family, talented and successful as they may be, as uncontrolled variables. Unlike the blood royals, they are private citizens with free-spirited lifestyles, active in the worlds of food criticism and fashion. To William, every Instagram post, every media interview, and every public appearance by a member of Camilla's biological family represents a potential security breach or a PR risk. He is demanding a reign that is clinical, streamlined, and free from the blended family complications that defined his father's era. As we look toward the end of 2026, 3 distinct scenarios are emerging from the shadow of Windsor Castle. Scenario 1, the chaos narrative, suggests an open rebellion from Queen Camilla. If the Queen decides to publicly challenge William's exclusion of her children, we could see the most significant rift between a sovereign and an heir since the 1990s. A public disagreement over family access would shatter the carefully crafted image of the United Four. However, most observers believe Camilla is too strategic for such a move, knowing that a frontal assault on the future king would only accelerate her own isolation. Scenario 2 is the stalemate. In this version of events, a compromise is reached where the Parker-Bowles family retains their honorary invitations to massive state events, such as the Trooping the Colour, but remains permanently barred from the private quarters of Windsor and Sandringham. They become ceremonial ghosts, visible in the distance on the balcony of Buckingham Palace, but never allowed near the inner circles of the king's heirs. It is a halfway house of royal status that satisfies no one. However, the most realist projection currently circulating among constitutional analysts is what we are calling the Windsor Purge, modelled after the Danish blueprint. In 2022, Queen Margrethe of Denmark stripped 4 of her grandchildren of their titles to future-proof the monarchy. William is reportedly applying a variation of this surgical trimming. Under this scenario, the Parker-Bowles family will execute a total permanent retreat into the shadows. They will vanish from the public eye entirely, ending all association with royal events. In exchange, King Charles is expected to provide a substantial private financial settlement to ensure his grandchildren's future security on the condition of absolute, lifelong silence. This is the Danish model applied with British coldness. It is a cash-for-concealment strategy that allows William to start his eventual reign with a clean slate. But a deal of this magnitude requires the king's signature. As Charles prepares for his most difficult medical journey yet, he is being forced to choose between the happiness of his wife and the demands of his son. The tension inside the private apartments of the palace has reached a breaking point. One question remains: what happens if the Queen refuses the deal? The answer may lie in a final, devastating document currently held in a secure safe at Adelaide Cottage, a document that redefines the Queen's role the moment Charles is no longer able to rule. As we stand at the threshold of a new era on this morning of March 16, 2026, the reality inside Windsor has become impossible to ignore. Prince William is not merely adjusting the guest list for a summer garden party. He is sending a devastatingly clear signal to Queen Camilla. If the reign of King Charles has been defined by the luxury of tolerance and the mending of old wounds, the coming reign of King William V will be defined by the cold necessity of discipline. The fracture is no longer a private family matter. It is a constitutional realignment. William is moving to ensure that when he ascends the throne, the blended monarchy experiment dies with the previous reign. He is carving out a future where the crown is protected by a vacuum, a space where no one without a direct blood-mandated role is allowed to linger. For the Parker-Bowles family, the golden ticket has expired. But the most explosive detail is yet to come. A high-level source within the Duchy of Cornwall office has confirmed the existence of a highly classified document currently stored in a digital vault at Adelaide Cottage. The file is simply titled The Transition. This is not a medical plan for the King. It is a strategic blueprint for the first 100 days of William's reign. According to those who have seen the executive summary, the transition contains a specific annex regarding the future of Queen Camilla. While tradition dictates that a widowed queen becomes the Queen Dowager, William's dossier allegedly outlines a much more restricted role. It suggests a mandatory retirement from all public-facing duties and a relocation from the primary royal residences to Raymil House Camilla's private estate in Wiltshire. The message is surgical. Under William, Camilla will not be a Queen Mother figure with influence over the new king. She will be a private widow, disconnected from the machinery of the state. Her children and grandchildren, already being filtered out of Windsor's gates today, are simply the first dominoes to fall in a much larger game of royal chess. This leaves the Queen with a haunting choice. Does she accept the silent purge to maintain a fragile peace during her husband's remaining time on the throne? Or does she activate the formidable PR network she has built over the last 30 years to launch one final counteroffensive to protect her children's legacy? Camilla is a survivor, and history shows that she is most dangerous when she is backed into a corner. The Windsor lockdown is only the opening move. As William prepares to take the mantle of leadership, the tension between the bloodline and the Parker-Bowles alliance is reaching a flashpoint that no amount of palace spin can hide. The era of the blended family is over. The era of the fortress monarchy has begun. If you found this investigation into the transition dossier compelling, please support our work by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support allows us to continue digging into the archives and sources that the palace would prefer remained hidden. What do you think is inside the final pages of The Transition? Leave a comment below with the word secret and share your theories. We are already verifying the next set of documents regarding the Princess of Wales's role in this strategic shift. You will not want to miss what we have uncovered for our next report. Stay tuned. The real story is just beginning to surface. 2:30 in the afternoon, Kensington Palace, Office 1A. While the world is distracted by the shifting headlines of the morning, a single manila envelope is placed on a mahogany desk. It is not delivered by mail. It does not go through the standard press office. This is a surgical strike, delivered by what insiders call the invisible hand. Within this envelope lies a 42-page dossier, bound by a single stainless steel clip and marked with a stamp that carries the weight of centuries. Privy Purse, confidential. This is the breaking news the global media has been waiting for, and as of this Saturday morning, March 14th, 2026, the narrative surrounding Meghan Markle has officially hit a point of no return. Legendary investigative author Tom Bower has reportedly received the final piece of a puzzle he has been chasing for years. But the real story isn't just what is inside the file, it is who allowed him to find it. Multiple sources within the royal household suggest that Prince William, the Prince of Wales, has moved from a position of passive silence to active tactical support. William does not leak, he facilitates. He does not whisper to tabloids, he leaves the vault doors unlocked for the investigators he trusts. By providing a backdoor to highly sensitive archival records, William has ensured that the upcoming revelations about Meghan's true history are not just rumours, but cold, hard, documented facts. Before we dive into the contents of those 42 pages, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support allows us to keep digging where others are afraid to look. Drop a comment below with the word truth if you believe the public deserves to know the real history of the Sussexes. The dossier in question is a lethal combination of data from the Home Office and the HM Passport Office. This is the authority staircase in action. At the base level, we have internal immigration records from her first entry into the United Kingdom. One level up, we have the official passport applications, which require a verified birth certificate. At the top, we have the legal mechanism of the Privacy Act. Here is the how it works of the legal trap being set. Step 1. A public figure submits a sworn statement of identity for a royal marriage license. Step 2. Official state documents are cross-referenced by a third-party investigator with high-level access. Step 3. If a discrepancy is found, the material misrepresentation clause is triggered. The consequence? According to the Royal Marriage Act of 1949, providing false information on a marriage registry isn't just a PR scandal, it is a legal breach that can render the public record of that marriage voidable. One witness, a former senior aide who was present when the file was first compiled, recounted a conversation between Prince William and his inner circle. The aide says the prince stood by the window of his office, looking toward the gardens, and stated quite clearly, quote, "The crown is built on the integrity of the record. If the record is a lie, the crown must correct it." When asked about the potential fallout for his brother, the prince reportedly replied, "Harry chose his path. I am choosing the monarchy." This 42-page document is a forensic audit of a life. It tracks every move from Los Angeles to Toronto to London. It compares the dates Meghan provided to the Screen Actors Guild with the dates she provided to the British government. The gap is not just a few months, it is an entire era of her life that seems to have been rewritten to fit a Hollywood narrative. As of this morning, lawyers for the Duchess of Sussex are reportedly in a state of high alert escalation. They have been issued a preliminary notice that certain protected personal data may no longer be shielded by the Crown's privacy protocols because those protocols were entered into under what is being called false pretenses. The clock is ticking toward a deadline that no PR firm can stop. Tom Bower is not just writing a book, he is presenting an indictment. And with the Prince of Wales providing the logistical map, the invisible hand is about to pull back the curtain on the woman the world thought it knew. Is this the moment the Sussex brand finally collapses under the weight of its own timeline? If you are ready for the specific dates and the birth certificate discrepancies, stay tuned for our next update. Make sure you have notifications turned on. The next hour will change everything. To understand the present crisis, we must perform a surgical extraction of the past. History is not what you are told, it is what can be proven in a court of record. Tom Bower's latest findings suggest that the woman the world knows as a 44-year-old duchess has been living a timeline meticulously scrubbed of its earliest chapters. This is the forensic breakdown of what the dossier calls the altered timeline. August 4th, 1975, West Park Hospital, Canoga Park. a baby girl is registered to the Markle household. The foundational truth is established, creating a 6-year rift between biological reality and the future. 1981 public narrative. For decades, this date remained buried in the dusty analog archives of Los Angeles County. Investigative sources indicate that this birth record is the ground zero of the current scandal. If this date is verified, Meghan Markle did not enter the royal family as a woman in her late 30s, but as a woman approaching her mid-40s. March 1997, 17 magazine editorial offices. New York. Meghan Markle is profiled and listed specifically as a 21-year-old student. A 6-year discrepancy is frozen in print, creating a permanent digital footprint that the later royal PR machine failed to sanitize. According to the official story, Meghan should have been 15 years old in 1997. Yet, the magazine describes a mature university student. One former staffer at the publication reportedly told Bauer's team, "We didn't make mistakes about age. We checked IDs for release forms. She was 21. Period." June 2003, Northwestern University, Illinois. Graduation from the School of Communication. The academic file is placed under a high-security seal shortly after the royal engagement announcement. Why seal a standard academic record? Bauer's investigation suggests that the entry dates and the age of her graduating cohort at Northwestern do not align with someone born in 1981. The records remain locked, but the invisible hand at Kensington Palace has reportedly obtained a copy of the original enrollment form, which allegedly lists a birth year that contradicts her current passport. 2011. Casting offices for the television series Suits. Toronto. Meghan recalibrates her professional age to secure the role of Rachel Zane. The industrial rejuvenation mechanism is activated to stay competitive in a brutal Hollywood pilot season. In the entertainment industry, this is known as a stage age. It is common practice for actresses to shave years off their biography to remain eligible for younger roles. However, what is acceptable for a television audition becomes a constitutional crisis when applied to a member of the British royal family. May 19, 2018, Street. George's Chapel, Windsor Castle. The signing of the Royal Marriage Registry, the act of public record perjury, is officially established as the bride signs a government document containing an unverified birth year. This is the point of no return. By signing that registry, the discrepancy moved from a Hollywood white lie to a potential breach of the Perjury Act. As of this morning, March 14, 2026, legal analysts are debating whether a marriage license based on fraudulent identity data remains fully binding under English law. April 2024. The offices of Tom Bauer, London. An encrypted drive is delivered by a courier from an anonymous source. The time bomb reaches its 0 hour. This drive contained the cross-reference data that Prince William's team had allegedly been quietly monitoring. It wasn't just about a birthday, it was about the 6 years of history that happened between 1975 and 1981. 6 years of life, relationships, and records that were meant to stay in the shadows forever. But as the sun rises over London today, those shadows are disappearing. And the most dangerous question remains. If she lied about the beginning of her story, what else is hidden in the middle? There is a photograph from a private gallery in 1992 that is about to change the definition of motherhood in this investigation. To understand why this is not merely another cycle of tabloid speculation, one must look at the structural integrity of the evidence. Tom Bauer has moved beyond the realm of anonymous whispers and into the authority staircase, a 3-tiered hierarchy of documentation that leaves no room for interpretation. This is a forensic reconstruction of a public identity built on the premise that while people can lie, the systems that govern our lives, insurance, government registries, and the law do not. The first level of this staircase leads directly to the archives of SAG-AFTRA, the Screen Actors Guild, and the American Federation of Television and Radio Artists. In the year 2005, as Meghan Markle was navigating the competitive landscape of Los Angeles acting, she submitted a mandatory filing for pension and health insurance benefits. These are not public-facing publicity bios, these are federal-level insurance documents. According to sources close to Bauer's investigation, this specific archive lists her birth year as 1977. In the world of insurance, age determines premiums, payouts, and liability. Providing a stage age on an insurance form is not a Hollywood perk, it is a financial discrepancy. If she were born in 1981, as currently claimed, she would have been paying rates for a woman 4 years older than herself. Money follows the truth, and in 2005, the money was following a woman born in 1977. As we ascend to the second level, the stakes move from the professional to the institutional. We enter the General Register Office, or the GRO, in the United Kingdom. This is where the invisible hand of Prince William becomes undeniable. Under normal circumstances, historical birth records are subject to strict privacy protocols. However, as the future monarch and a senior member of the Privy Council, William possesses the authority to trigger what is known as a special search. This mechanism allowed a direct side-by-side comparison between the California long-form birth certificate filed in Los Angeles and the certified copies submitted to the palace for the royal wedding preparations. Reporters embedded in this story claim that when these two documents were laid out on a table in Whitehall, they did not match. The California record allegedly showed a birth date in the mid-70s, while the document used to brief the late Queen Elizabeth II adhered to the 1981 narrative. This discrepancy suggests that the institution of the monarchy was briefed using a modified reality. The third and final level of the staircase is the nuclear option, the legal consequence. We are looking at the Marriage Act of 1949. In British law, the validity of a marriage is predicated on the accuracy of the identity provided at the time of the ceremony. If a party knowingly provides materially false information regarding their identity, which includes their legal age, the marriage enters the territory of being voidable. Under the Act, a marriage can be declared null if it is proven that the registry was signed under false pretenses. This is the legal trapdoor that has now been opened. If the birth year on that famous 19 May 2018 registry is proven to be a fabrication, the union between the Duke and Duchess of Sussex is no longer just a family matter, it becomes a matter of constitutional fraud. As of this morning, March 14, 2026, the legal teams at Buckingham Palace are reportedly reviewing the material misrepresentation clauses. The question is no longer about a secret, it is about the law. If the foundation is a lie, can the house still stand? The investigation is now moving toward the most guarded secret of all. If the age was shifted, what happened in the years that were erased? The answer lies in a 2002 travel log that has just surfaced from a remote location in Argentina. The question isn't just whether a lie was told, the question is how an entire global identity was engineered to sustain it. In the high-stakes world of Hollywood branding, age is not a biological fact, it is a flexible commodity. Tom Bauer's investigation into the Duchess of Sussex has uncovered what he calls the rejuvenation mechanism, a clinical, 5-step protocol designed to rewrite a public history from the ground up. This wasn't a spontaneous decision. It was a strategic operation that began long before she met Prince Harry. To understand how the 1981 narrative was built, we must look at the mechanics of digital and psychological sanitization. Step 1. Digital brainwashing. Before the global spotlight of the television series Suits, there were traces of a different Meghan Markle. There were local theatre reviews from the late 90s, small-town California news snippets, and early acting bios on niche industry platforms. Bauer's dossier suggests a systematic scrubbing took place between 2010 and 2012. Old articles were quietly removed, and digital archives were purged of any mention that linked her to a graduation class or an event that would betray her true timeline. If the data doesn't exist, the past doesn't exist. Step 2. The new profile anchor. In the entertainment industry, IMDb is the Bible. But there is a backdoor known as IMDb Pro, a subscription-based service that allows talent agents and managers to edit professional biographies. Under this mechanism, an agent can update a client's birth year. As long as there is no formal legal challenge, the system accepts the change as a professional correction. By shifting her birth year to 1981 on this industry-standard platform, the lie was given a veneer of truth that journalists and casting directors accepted without question. Step 3. False memory anchoring. This is the psychological component. Meghan has famously shared the story of her letter-writing campaign against a sexist soap commercial. She tells the world she was 11 or 12 years old when it happened. However, if you apply the 1975 birth year, she would have been 17, a young adult, rather than a precocious child. By repeatedly telling the story and emphasizing her childhood age, she anchored the 1981 timeline into the public's mind through emotional storytelling. The narrative was bent to protect the branding of a young activist. Step 4. Contractual binding. When she signed with elite agencies like WME, the rejuvenated age was reportedly baked into her professional contracts. In Hollywood, a rising star in her early 30s has significantly higher commercial value for beauty endorsements and leading roles than a veteran actress in her late 30s. By the time she reached London, her age was no longer just a personal choice. It was a contractual obligation, defended by a multi-million-dollar PR machine. The ultimate consequence of this mechanism is what legal experts are now calling the transition of deceit. What began as a common Hollywood survival tactic, a stage age, used to secure auditions, transformed into a political crime the moment she entered the British royal family. In the hills of Toronto, it was branding. In the halls of Windsor, it became a matter of state records. As of this morning, March 14, 2026, the rejuvenation mechanism has stalled. The digital fingerprints of the original archives have been recovered. But the most chilling realization isn't about the branding itself, it is about the man who stood by and watched it happen. At 11 o'clock tonight at Frogmore Cottage, a discovery was made in a small, forgotten safe. A discovery that suggests Prince Harry wasn't just a witness to the lie, he was its most terrified captive. He knew the clock was ticking, and he knew what would happen when it finally struck midnight. The silence of a prince is often louder than his words. For years, royal observers have noted a recurring pattern in public interviews. Whenever the Duchess of Sussex recounts her formative years or her precocious activism, Prince Harry's body language undergoes a subtle but profound shift. He does not look at the camera. He does not look at his wife. He looks at the floor. This is not the behavior of a proud husband. It is the physical manifestation of a man holding a secret that could dismantle his entire world. Tom Bower's latest dossier suggests that Prince Harry is not a victim of ignorance, but a victim of knowledge. He is the captive keykeeper, trapped within a mutual non-disclosure agreement that was forged long before the world knew the name Meghan Markle. To understand Harry's entrapment, we must look at a specific, undocumented night at Frogmore Cottage. The time was 11 p.m. The year was shortly after their wedding. In a small fireproof safe hidden within the private study, Harry reportedly discovered an old, weathered American passport, one that predated her television career. According to an associate close to the household, the date of birth on that document did not say 1981. It allegedly confirmed the 1975 birth year that Tom Bower has been chasing. The realization was immediate. If the world found out, the fairy tale was over. But Harry did not call his father. He did not call the palace lawyers. In a moment of desperate protection, he reportedly removed the identifying pages and incinerated them in the cottage fireplace. He chose the lie because the truth was too expensive to afford. The binding mechanism that keeps Harry silent is not just emotional, it is constitutional. Before the late Queen Elizabeth II granted her formal consent for the marriage, Harry was required to sign a sovereign sponsorship mandate. This document serves as a legal guarantee of the spouse's background and integrity. Under the terms of this mandate, Harry assumed full indemnity liability for Meghan's representation to the Crown. If Harry were to admit today that the timeline was falsified, he would be admitting to a material breach of sovereign trust. The consequences are catastrophic. The immediate and permanent loss of his remaining inheritance, the total withdrawal of his global security protection from the British government, and the potential stripping of his remaining titles for fraudulent entry into the royal record. Harry is in a legal and financial cage. If he speaks, he loses his family and his protection. If he remains silent, he continues to facilitate a narrative that the Prince of Wales is now actively dismantling. This is the sovereign trap. Harry is essentially a hostage to a timeline he helped protect in that fireplace at Frogmore. As of this morning, March 14th, 2026, the pressure on the Duke is reaching a breaking point. Sources in Montecito report that the atmosphere is one of high alert isolation. Prince Harry has reportedly been seen pacing the grounds of their estate, clutching a phone that hasn't rung from London in months. He is waiting for a signal that may never come. But while Harry waits, the investigation moves forward to its final, most devastating stage. Tom Bower has just received a notification from a business analyst in New York. It concerns the material misrepresentation clauses in the Sussexes' remaining commercial contracts. If the age is proven false, the money stops instantly. And without the money, the cage Harry is in becomes even smaller. What happens when the invisible hand of William finally reaches the bank accounts? The answer lies in the Project 1999 folder, and it is more explosive than anyone imagined. As the sun sets on this Saturday, March 14th, 2026, the global power dynamic has shifted. The dossier is no longer a secret. The invisible hand of Kensington Palace has completed its delivery. And the world is now staring at a scenario tree that defines the endgame for the Duchess of Sussex. There are 3 possible futures. But according to the business analysts and royal insiders monitoring this breaking crisis, only one represents the inevitable reality. The first path is Scenario Alpha, total chaos. In this version of events, Meghan Markle launches a scorched-earth legal campaign against Tom Bower and his publishers. While it seems like a strong move, it contains a lethal trap known in the legal world as discovery. If she sues for defamation regarding her age, her lawyers must open every vault. Every medical record, every birth certificate, and every confidential insurance filing would become public evidence. It would be a 5-year war that exposes the very things she has fought to hide. It is a suicide mission for a brand built on curated perfection. The second path is Scenario Beta, institutional silence. This is the traditional royal way, the old guard approach. A secret settlement is reached behind closed doors at Buckingham Palace. Meghan agrees to a permanent withdrawal from public life and the cessation of all media projects in exchange for the Crown keeping her true birth records under a 100-year seal. But this is 2026. The Prince of Wales is no longer interested in the old ways. William is playing for accountability, not just quiet. This leads us to the third and most realistic path, the purge. This is the scenario where the hammer of the invisible hand finally falls. With the evidence of material misrepresentation now circulating among high-level investigators, Meghan's commercial foundation is beginning to dissolve. Global giants like Netflix and Spotify operate on strict ethics and accuracy clauses. If it is proven that their brand partner secured multi-million-dollar contracts under a falsified biography, they will not just cancel her, they will trigger clawback provisions to recover every cent ever paid. Why is the purge the most likely outcome? Because in the world of global finance, money is the only language that matters, and it is Meghan's only vulnerability. When the corporations feel deceived, they do not negotiate, they litigate. In this scenario, Meghan becomes credibility stateless. Without the protection of the crown and without the backing of the Hollywood elite, the facade collapses. As of this afternoon, the Prince of Wales has reportedly authorised a final briefing for the government's constitutional advisers. The goal is clear: to ensure that the integrity of the royal record is restored, regardless of the personal cost to his brother. But as we reach the end of this current dossier, a new and more chilling chapter has emerged. Tom Bower has confirmed that the 42-page file from Kensington Palace contains one final, sequestered folder. It is labelled Project 1999. The documents inside do not talk about magazines or acting credits. They point to a specific medical facility in Los Angeles and a birth record from 30 years ago, one that Meghan Markle has never publicly acknowledged. It involves a child whose existence has been scrubbed from every official biography. Is the secret of her age merely a distraction to hide a much larger secret about her past? The truth is no longer buried, it is breathing. If you want to see the Project 1999 files as they are decrypted, you need to act now. Subscribe to this channel and turn on all notifications. This story is moving faster than the palace can control. Like this video to show you stand for the truth, and comment 989 below to gain access to our next deep dive. The morning update will change everything you thought you knew about the Sussexes.